What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast presented to you by Texas Beat. I'm Connor O'Gara. Well, I am old enough to remember a time in which I thought, we might not have an SEC head coach fired this year. Ooh, yikes. Jimbo on Sunday, Zach Arnett on Monday. Shout out to Mississippi State for making that decision 9 a.m. on a Monday. That is chef's kiss. I know we talk about how much we get cold takes with coach firings because they always seem to happen about an hour after we record or something like that. But a Monday morning when you're already in the thick of it and you're like, oh, boom, I can react to this. We're good to go. Thank you, Mississippi State, for doing right by us, big J's in the business. We have a lot to talk about. Cake week, of course. And yes, it's cake week, not cupcake week. Ari Wasserman, he's going to join us to talk about Michigan. Some very strong opinions he has on the 12-team playoff, fast food items in general. Of course, we always discuss with Ari. And then we're going to get into some Jimbo context on the weird ending in College Station and more. But let's talk Mississippi State first. When you saw that Zach Arnett was fired, did you think to yourself, those are disrespecters of the 3-3-5? Or, man, I wish I could have that Kevin Barbay draft pick back in our coordinator draft?
You know me too well, but I will say that was the second and third thing that I thought. First thing was, hey, 225 area code, lighten up on your phone. Maybe give them a day to process it or so.
Brian Kelly, get Zach Arnett tomorrow. Get him tomorrow.
Sometimes you're not calling Baton Rouge. Sometimes Baton Rouge is calling you.
Amen, Will. Amen. Yeah, 10 games. That's all Zach Arnett got. And in hindsight, I think bad timing. And I don't fault the move at all to promote him to full-time head coach. I really don't. I think that we can look back and say, oh, this is why you don't hire a defensive-minded head coach or whatever. Like, pick whatever narrative you want. You also can look at this situation, understand why it happened at each step. You had a new athletic director, Zach Selman, come in after the move was made to hire Zach Arnett, to promote Zach Arnett post Mike Leach death. He was even cheaper to buy out than I realized. I thought the buyout was $9 million. Turns out it was only $4 million. Those head coach contracts in the state of Mississippi, I just continue to be baffled by. They put my brain in a pretzel. And there was no doubt whatsoever, as we talked about on Sunday, before we even got into the Zach Arnett, whether or not he's going to come back discussion, there was no doubt that they were going to bail on this offense. That was, hay was in the barn there. That's the one thing that I wonder about with Arnett. If he could do things over, would he have gone in a different direction offensively? And look, he might have failed because of how football young he is, and that might be a decision that he looks back on a few years from now, and he learns from it. He is the second youngest Power 5 head coach in the country, or at least he was. He was the youngest SEC head coach since Lane Kiffin at Tennessee 2009. I mean, think about that. That's not my way of making excuses for him, but if he had hired an air raid disciple, could things have gone differently? That's what I wonder about. We've talked a lot about the transition away from the Mike Leach air raid because it is truly a one-of-one offense. It was always going to be difficult, and you are probably always going to need time to be able to make that work. And I was kind of going back and looking at some of the post-Leach offenses at places where they ran his offense, where, Leach leaves Kentucky for Oklahoma. Kentucky sticks with the Hal Mummy air raid for another 2 seasons. Doesn't really go as well because Leach is kind of, Hal Mummy's the mastermind, but Leach was the one that was obviously pushing all the right buttons. Leach leaves Oklahoma for Texas Tech. People forget he was at Oklahoma before Texas Tech. Oklahoma sticks with the air raid 2000, wins a national title with that offense that Leach implemented with Josh Heupel. Post Texas Tech fallout, they stick with Leach disciple Neil Brown, obviously now at West Virginia. They ran the air raid all the way through the Cliff Kingsbury era for basically another decade. There are a lot of people right now where if you said, hey, what offense does Texas Tech run? They'd probably say, oh, they just run the air raid. Just assume that they do, even though they don't anymore. Like Washington State, they actually shifted away from the air raid to the run and shoot. They averaged 10 points a game less in each of their post-Leach seasons, which I think we have a large enough sample size to say 3 years post-Leach. It is pretty uncommon to shift away from the air raid right after Leach leaves. And if you do, you're going to need time. You just are. Arnett didn't have that time. And even if he did, there really wasn't much from the Kevin Barbay offense that suggested this would work in the long term to play the complementary football that he sought and the reason why he made that change in the first place. Inevitably, like, look, Zach Arnett, he's going to bounce back. He's going to be just fine. If it's not LSU, maybe it's going to be USC. Maybe it's going to be Lincoln Riley calling him up and say, come back to the West Coast. Let's make this thing go. Would be a great hire. So now this opening is super interesting because as we mentioned on Sunday, Dan Mullen's out there. He's out there. I went back. I listened to the interview that I did with him in August, and I wrote a little bit about that for that on SDS. You can go check that out, SaturdayDownSouth.com. That would be my first call if I'm Zach Selman. It would. You won't find a better offensive schemer. He still loves Starkville. He's got some new perspective after the Florida experience. And I think if he had known how things would play out at Florida, I don't think he would have left Mississippi State. That's me saying that, not him saying that. I think he always wanted to scratch that itch. But if he had looked at his career and thought about being, considered an icon at Mississippi State and staying longer and being a 20-year guy, I think he would have taken that opportunity. But
hold on, what was his buyout? Do you remember?
His buyout at Florida or his buyout? His buyout at Florida was $12 million. It didn't change after he got that raise. He got that raise post year 3 from Scott Strickland, despite the fact that he had the weirdest season maybe ever for a head coach. Like the amount of things that went wrong, many of which were in his control amidst a historically good offense it was that Kyle Trask put together, and how Kyle Trask is a Heisman finalist. And Mullen in so many ways reinvented himself, but it was still because of all of the things that happened, the Mizzou brawl, the Pack the Swamp comments, the show cause, which was a really, really big deal that people don't talk probably enough about. There are a lot of things that happened that went poorly and made Florida not want to extend him. And they didn't raise that buyout. They kept the buyout at $12 million, despite the fact that they made him one of the 5 highest paid coaches in the country that year. So look, I think that Mullen left, and he said it, like he felt he took Mississippi State as far as it could go. There's a case to be made for that. Okay. He didn't want to leave the cupboard bare. He didn't want to leave at a time in which he felt it was in a rebuilding state. But I talked with Chris Childers and Aaron Murray the other day about this because they have a regular Sirius XM segment with Mullen, like every week. And one of the things that Mullen said earlier in the week after they asked him about the job, they asked him about the opening. Mullen said, do you know how hard it would be to recreate what we built there? It wasn't a no, I'm not taking this, but it is worth noting that even if the stars aligned, and this did actually happen, which, look, a lot of things are going to have to fall in place for this to be a real possibility and not just a fun thing to talk about with an interesting job opening. It's not as if Mississippi State can just snap its fingers and pick up right where Mullen left off. That's not how this works. It's not. It's a rebuild. And I'm not convinced that Mullen wants that. I'm not convinced of that. Before he came on back in August, we were just kind of like making small talk beforehand, whatever. And I asked him just what his life is about now. I would love to write a book one day about the life of a coach in the year or two after he gets fired. I think that'd be so fascinating to follow around all of those coaches. Chizik and Jeff Collins. I've built up a little bit of a Rolodex of these guys that I communicate with, and I'm fascinated by their lives. I just think it's really interesting when you get that buyout money and what do you do when you've only known one way of life for so long. And I was genuinely interested in how that has gone with Mullen. And
hold on, that's a great concept. I would read that book. I'm not saying that is a great do that. If it ever gets made into a movie, just cast anyone but Kevin James. Okay, continue.
Oh God, yeah. Goodness gracious. One of the worst casting decisions in a sports movie ever. Hands down. And I used to be a big Kevin James defender. That movie, that's not the direction they should have gone with that. But yeah, Mullen basically said, my life's awesome. And outside of some radio hits, I haven't worked since January. He went to London. He went to Paris, living this great life on the lake. And in season, he's really good at calling games with Matt Berry, friend of the program. And he does that on Thursday nights. He does the in-studio thing all day on Saturday. The longer you stay out of this, though, the tougher it is to keep your name involved. And if you have any desire to do this again, any desire whatsoever, eventually you get back into it. I used to talk with Chizik about that a lot. About if you have any sort of unfinished business, whatever. If that hunger is still there, you always want to try and do something to make sure that you're not leaving anything on the table. No meat left on the bone. Usually don't see reunions. But think about it. Why would you see a reunion? Because coaches are usually fired or they leave for bigger and better jobs and their ego gets in the way of running it back. Mullen still claims Mississippi State. He does. Could he be to Mississippi State what Greg Schiano is to Rutgers? That's the reunion. That's it right there. Yep. Just a perfect person for that job in different eras of the sport who like just gets it and just understands what it takes to maximize the potential of that program. Gun to my head, I don't think we will see it. But I don't think either party should rule it out. I really don't. So like I've thought a lot about it over the course of the last few days. And I immediately after the Arnett thing, I didn't even wait. God, the body was still warm on that one when I was tweeting about Mullen to Mississippi State. I feel a little bit guilty about that. But look, I think it's really interesting. I think it's really, really interesting. Thoughts on Mullen and a Mississippi State reunion potentially before I dig in some other candidates?
Yeah, I think the Mullen thing is so fascinating. And honestly, this is going to sound insane, but I think that Mullen taught me more about football than probably any other coach because his limitations were so obvious, but his strengths were also so obvious. And it was literally, he was a walking test case. It was, if you have a better offensive scheme than every team you play almost, but worse talent, how far can you actually go? And the answer was not great against top 25 teams. And he's a guy who is a genius. He's almost like inverse Arnett in a way, or like a version of Lane Kiffin, where it's like, you are a great play caller. The thing that's tough is like a dream role for him would be if he were to go to like Penn State and be their offensive coordinator. Like if he could just do what he did at Florida, call plays, not have to recruit, not have to like be the face of the program. He doesn't have to give press conferences or answer for his mistakes. That stuff he never learned how to do. I think him being on air is so perfect, but you still see like the things that make him good on air are the things that made him not so good on as a head coach. As much as I hate to credit Saban, he's the only guy I've really seen do both well, right? Like Bill Belichick is not good on air. Saban can sell some stuff, right? Most head coaches aren't about it. Like Kirby Smart is not going to go give you, he does this little like Ford commercial he does up here, but it's kind of funny. Like he's a little bit petty and that's what makes him good on air. He's always there with like, he'll dig in there. And that's what head coaches try to avoid. They try to avoid the bulletin board material. So yeah, I think that, but that being said, I could see a version where, cause is Marks back next year? Random question.
I think he has the option to come back still. I need to make sure that he has eligibility. I haven't looked at that one. I've dug into the quarterbacks and whatnot, but I don't know with him. That's an interesting case just because if you're having to play in yet another new offense, what does his draft stock look like? I think he should have helped himself with what he was able to do when he was healthy, but I don't know that you can assume anybody is back if you're a head coach and guys have this 30-day window to be able to transfer.
Well, what's funny about that is that like he actually could just kind of restart the process over. I always talk about when he started with Boobie Dixon and he had more carries than Mark Ingram when Mark Ingram won the Heisman. Like if he was going to rebuild this program, there's a very clear blueprint. You come back, everybody is going back to that heavier personnel, the two tight ends, under center. You just go, you know what? We're going to run the ball down their throat. We're going to play good defense. Or, they have defensive personnel, obviously. Like, I actually think he could kind of do the exact same thing again because that style of offense is now coming back into vogue, and they actually kind of have the personnel for it. But that being said, I don't know. Like you said, if he wants to just start all over again, I think that he would. I think he would take the Florida job all over again to say he did it. Like, because I think he would always have wondered what would have happened if he had just stayed at Mississippi State. And I think, that's worse sometimes than losing, is thinking you could have won, like being sure, because that hire was amazing hire when it happened. I was worried as an LSU fan when they brought his offensive mind. We saw it with Tony and Pitts and those boys, like how effective they were. But point being, like, yeah, I think his next path is going to be so interesting because so many teams could use a guy with his exact skill set. But I don't think he's put enough out there to where anyone would really feel great. And I think State would be a fine place. But again, like once you get, if he's a guy who's not super committed to recruiting and not super committed to the real like marginal details that Kirby Smart and Saban went on, if you want to get back into that schedule, honestly, and just be up every day, if you hanging out with your family and you're having a good time, you're on a lake and you're going to Paris, like telling your wife that, like, we got to go do this again. It's tough. Yeah.
One of the things that he brought up that I thought was interesting, he hates the new calendar for coaches. And he thinks it's one of those things that the NCAA should step in and regulate a little bit more, and how, it was no secret that by the time he was done at Florida, he was kind of burnt out by just trying to be able to build up those recruiting contacts. And that's going to be a question if he takes any head coaching job again, is, all right, what does your motor look like for that? But yeah, in terms of knowing Starkville, understanding how to get alignment there, I would think that so many of those things would be working in his favor. And you're right about the coordinator point. He could go somewhere and be an awesome coordinator. He hasn't done it yet. There's no way that his phone hasn't been ringing off the hook for those opportunities. There's just no way. And to me, that's a sign of a guy who's been waiting for the right situation. Maybe Mississippi State is the right situation. Maybe it's not. If it's not Mullen, two names that I would pursue. Pretty obvious here. You kind of know where I'm going with this one. I'm not breaking any news by saying this. Jamie Chadwell's an obvious one at Liberty. As quiet of a 10-0 start as an FBS team can possibly have, because you haven't faced Power 5 competition. I know for a fact, after having him on the show a couple years ago, he loves the idea of coaching in the SEC. I mean, the guy is like, you listen to him talk, everything that he is about screams SEC coach, in my opinion. Half hour outside of Knoxville, he grew up a diehard Tennessee fan, named his son Heath after Heath Schuler. Like,
so he's crazy. I love that.
He's been.
I'm not calling him out. I'm not saying this bad, but he's just like me for real, is what I mean. Like, that's, if I have a son Boudreaux or something, like, that's my type of guy who is a son after an SEC football player,
Chadwell's got boys who are still diehard Tennessee fans. They're probably like representative of Vol. He's got some boys that are on Vol Twitter and whatnot, but he would make sense.
I love that. I'm literally saying that you need to be that way to win here. I love that so much. I hope
and he brings a unique skill set too. It's not like he's just coming in and doesn't have any sort of identity. In some ways, his identity with that spread option offense, which is so unique to be able to game plan for if you've watched it. I've also wondered if that has scared athletic directors off from hiring him for a Power 5 jobs at a time, like at different times, because it's not like you're committing to the triple option or something like that. Like, it's different. It's not quite that level. But it's not like he's cranking out a bunch of NFL guys. Isaiah Likely's his only NFL guy on the offensive side of the ball. Like, that's it. At least in terms of draft picks. So it's something to consider. It might be something that is considered a holdup, and it might be one of the reasons why he hasn't had that opportunity come open yet. But he's 41-6 since the start of 2020. And that's even with Grayson McCall kind of like banged up during his last two seasons at Coastal. So I think that Jamie Chadwell is a guy that could be on the up and up. And by the way, that tweet that was surfacing, that actually Mullen retweeted, that Matt Berry, there's no way that's real. That's fake news.
It's shop. That's a great troll though. It's like a rival fan base of Liberty. I forgot which one that like put that out there. That is one of the best trolls I've ever seen in my life. And again, completely back to my Dan Mullen point. You shouldn't be doing that, bro.
Yeah, if it was by the way, for those who don't know what we're talking about, you don't spend time on the app formerly known as Twitter. It was Jamie Chadwell quote tweeting something Liberty related, like show up on Saturday, and it had a location that was Starkville, Mississippi, and everybody's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Tweeting from Starkville, blah blah blah." And it's like, first of all, like it said in the tweet, retweets, and retweets has not been a thing. It's been reposts, so that's how you kind of knew right there. This has definitely been Photoshop doctored with, but whatever. I mean, still would not surprise me if he's a serious candidate and somebody that they're considering. Another one, guy that talked about a lot, but Brian Johnson, man. Brian Johnson would make even more sense for this job than he would the Arkansas job. And I know plenty of people will tell me this, probably going to be part of an Eagles team that makes a deep run in the playoffs again as their OC. He got promoted from quarterbacks coach to OC. He could be on the fast track to an NFL head coaching gig, which is crazy for someone who's 36. He's 36, but NFL coordinator, like I just think NFL coordinator jobs are more fleeting than people realize. Go ask Ken Dorsey about that. I mean, golly, that guy was considered on the up and up, and just like that, he's fallen off the face of the earth. And his interim,
look at Joe Brady, man.
Exactly.
He's back. Yeah, that's the thing. He had the fleeting. He was on top of the world. He probably could have got a head coaching job after that LSU run. He's like, no, I'm gonna go be the Panthers OC. He got fired for like a season and a half and got stuck in the closet with Harry Potter as like a quarterbacks coach. And now it's like, well, now you're back to being an OC. Look at you, man.
Dude, you have a bad month as a coordinator in the NFL, and just like that, you're gone. So I don't know.
Unless
and I don't know.
Coach for the Saints
or
the Bears.
You're hitting close to home here, Will. So I don't know what his aspirations are, but he obviously already has Mississippi State on his resume, and that's why I bring it up,
Mm-hmm.
because he was Mullen's quarterbacks coach for 3 years during the 2 great DAC seasons, 2014, 2015, and then the first with Nick Fitzgerald. From everything that I've heard, that guy is a leader of men in every way, shape, and form. Like, there should be obvious interest there for Zach Selman, even if he's locked into the NFL, which he might be, because the guy left his job as a Florida offensive coordinator, albeit not one with play calling duties, to be the Eagles quarterbacks coach. And that sounded off the alarms then. It's still a sign, in my opinion, that he wants an NFL future. People might not want to hear this, but having a young black head coach at Mississippi State that is as respected as Brian Johnson is would be a significant development in a conference that, with 16 teams, isn't looking like it'll have a black head coach for the 4th consecutive season. Okay, something to think about. And I know people are like, oh, he should get the job, not because of the color of skin. I fully get that. Johnson would be hired because of his football acumen, not the color of his skin. But and Mississippi State wouldn't be hiring him to check a box. I mean, this is the program that made Sylvester Croom the first black head football coach in SEC history. So it's not about that for them. It's about getting somebody there that's right for the job. And I think Brian Johnson would be an awesome, awesome hire. He would develop the crap out of quarterbacks, and he could recruit, he could develop, he could lead, he could do all those things. I don't really doubt the interest in what could be on the table there, but he would be awesome. I don't really see it as much with Lance Leipold, just because, and he's awesome at Kansas, and I'm not saying he's not going to get a bigger job. He will. But after the Moorhead thing, I think there would be a bit of skepticism about the regional ties. And if you lose, all of a sudden it's, oh, well, it's because you don't really understand the landscape here. You're not recruiting well enough. Like, that's an easy out. And I don't know if they would go down that road. And that's kind of the same reason why I don't think Jonathan Smith would make as much sense. And as much as I love what Jonathan Smith has done at his alma mater at Oregon State, he was the best hire of that cycle. Looking back on it, I think there'd be some fear that, again, like the second you lose games, it's because, oh, you're an outsider, you're not doing this well, you're not doing that enough. And that's not to say that Mississippi State would turn him down. If Jonathan Smith's agent called up Zach Selman and said, hey, we would love to be able to make this happen. We want the Mississippi State job. We want to get off the sinking ship and get to one of the 2 power conferences instead of being the coach of one of 2 teams in a conference. That's a very big difference. The Pac-2, whatever you want to call it next year. But yeah, I think they're going to go with somebody on the offensive side of the ball. Zach Selman could go back to his Oklahoma roots, could decide Jeff Lebby is ready for that opportunity. That'd be an interesting one, but they want stability. They really want stability. 4th head coach post Mullen. That's a lot. And like, Leach's death is part of it. It wasn't supposed to be like that, but still, I mean, you fired 2 of them before getting to year 3. You want stability. You really do. And people always say Auburn rotates through coaches. No, that is such a lazy narrative. Auburn has had 5 coaches in the 21st century. People realize that? That's
Tuberville and Gus were there for like 11 years between them, 12, probably more than that, actually. Yeah,
no, more than that. Yeah, because Gus was there from 2013 through 2020. He got 8 years. Then Tuberville was 99 through 2007. So we're
so almost closer to 20. That's crazy. Yeah, like Auburn's. Yeah. Anyway,
2008, I think it was. Yeah,
2008. Yeah. I remember that was the year of the game. You never won.
That's right. That's right. Good point. But yeah, I think the next hire is going to be tasked with doing what Arnett thought and hoped he could do at Mississippi State, get him into the 12-team playoff conversation. That's going to be the goal for Mississippi State moving forward.
How do we feel about Willie Fritz?
I think they're going to want to go with the offensive side of the ball. Okay. And I know he gets thrown on every single time there's an opening in the SEC. He does. And I'm not saying that I am not anti that hire. I'm not at all. They're the top ranked Group of 5 team right now. People realize that? Isn't that crazy? Yep. Like they're sitting there right now with 1 loss, a game that they did not have their starting quarterback for, lost to Ole Miss. We were talking about this game
the other day. They almost beat Ole Miss. They were right there at the end with the backup. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about the game the other day. It was a 3-point game with 5 minutes left, and Jackson Dart makes an unbelievable play to hit Michael Trigg in space. Like, Tulane's just won a New Year's Six Bowl last year. That would be a hire that I would have no problem with whatsoever. I'm trying to get to a place with some of these hires, and I'm going to be like this. I'm going to try and be like this with A&M as well, where I'm not as black and white about how I feel about it and saying, this is a home run hire. This is going to be a smash. Like, yeah, I like it. I get the logic behind it. This is what they're going to have to do to make it work. So I'm going to try not be so definitive about that.
Mhm.
I know that's a dumb thing to say in the content business, the takes business, but I'm gonna try and leave it open for a little bit more interpretation because I feel like we get so much of this stuff wrong the second that the hire is made.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think this is a fascinating job. I think that the state of Mississippi actually has a ton of talent. I think that infrastructurally, it turns out like Mississippi is an all time place where you like look somebody up and you're like, oh, you're from Mississippi. Like one of my coworkers went to Southern Miss, and I always joke about people who are Cajun, and she always jokes about people from Mississippi. And it's like crazy how much talent they have down there. And so it is going to be as funny as this is looking back at Mullen. You got to get some diamonds in the rough. You got to get those like 3-star guys that kind of may play at a smaller high school that are you can develop. And so yeah, I think probably like a grassroots guy, maybe not even the splashiest of hires. So yeah, I think it's fascinating. And actually, before we move on, that 2008 game, like the 3-2 Mississippi State Auburn game, was that the last game where both coaches got fired because of it? Because that's what happened with A&M Mississippi State.
But it didn't happen immediately after. That's the difference.
Oh, true.
That's the difference.
So has there ever been a game that you remember? I'm sure there has been one, but both coaches got fired on Monday or like did not have a job on Monday.
There's got to be. There's got to be because a late season game like that, right? A final week of the season, and it's probably not recent because usually athletic directors in today's day and age like to get out ahead of this a little bit more and not do the Brett Bielema thing where he gets fired on the field after losing to Mizzou, and you're like, okay,
man,
yeah, I could have just done this a few weeks ago, but it has to have happened. It has to have happened, but maybe not with a game that was wherein one team won by 41 points. I mean, those
boys looked around and said, dang, they beat us by 51 on us and they fired their head coach. What are we going to do? We got to fire our head coach too.
Seriously. Yeah. Very weird circumstances moving forward for both of those teams. But yes, very, very interesting openings for different reasons, A&M and Mississippi State. Talk more about the A&M opening with Ari. So we'll dig into that a little bit more there. Okay. Actual football, Will. Cake week. Yeah. It is here. We call it Cake Week because cupcakes are dainty. They are soft. There are negative associations with cupcakes, and everybody likes cake. And you know what? People dog Cupcake Week. They say it's stupid. They say the SEC doesn't challenge itself and blah, 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 blah. Call it Cake Week. Call it Cake Week because cake is delicious. You don't have to make a fool of yourself when eating it like you do with the cupcake. It doesn't get all over your beard. Shout out to all my bearded fellas. Cake is great. Cupcakes, they're fine. You can take them, you can leave them. Cake Week, it's here. I've explained that before, but I think I need to do that every single year because people are always like, did you mean to say Cupcake Week? No, I meant to say Cake Week. That's how we do it.
No. Yes.
No, hard no. All right, Florida, Mizzou. Mizzou's an 11-point favorite. How about number 9 in the college football
playoff? Connor?
No, sir. Well, cupcake for one team, potentially. Over under, I have 73 Cody Schrader snaps. Woo! He played 73 snaps on Saturday against Tennessee. Career high for him. 73 snaps, 40 scrimmage touches, 326 yards. That is an ice bath. Okay? I hope so, at least. He was unbelievable. He was incredible. So the question is, how much gas does he have left in the tank? I went back and looked at some high school stuff with Cody Schrader. Two-way player. Of course he was.
Of course.
Played running back and linebacker. Not just, I'm going to play linebacker and come in the fourth quarter, get some tackles because I'm good enough. I'm the best athlete on the team. This guy came in and was getting every tackle. Well, he had 481 tackles in high school. 481. Do the math on that.
There's not even that many games in high school. How you get that many?
That's like an average, and he played varsity as a freshman. You're basically averaging.
Yeah,
You're like averaging 10 tackles a game for your career to do that as a running back, as the focal point of the offense. Running back and linebacker is the toughest combination in terms of motor to be able to play both ways. It's like, sorry, lineman, and I'm sure I'm probably not looking at some heart rate stat or something like that or whatever, but like you can kind of take some plays off here and there. Running back and linebacker, you can't take plays off. You just can't do that. New level of respect for Cody Schrader.
I don't know how we missed on this guy because like everything about this.
Everybody missed. Like, Eli Drinkowitz missed. Eli Drinkowitz didn't even give him a scholarship. He was a walk-on.
No, yeah, not like we, like me and you, but just as a society, it's like, this actually feels like it makes more sense to be this way. Like some guys, like he came out of nowhere, like Joe Burrow or whatever. It's like, no, this dude feels like he's kind of been this guy every second I've seen him. I don't know.
He's an all-state player in,
Right.
he's a St. Louis kid, and
Mm-hmm.
we whiffed on him because homie's 5'9", and 5'9" guys just don't get the love that they deserve, is what I always say.
Prejudice against short people, or not short people, non-tall people strikes again.
Amen, Will. Short kings, we need love. We need love,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Just saying. So here's the thing. That's bad news for Florida. That train wreck of a Florida defense and what it has become, it's not just that Jaden Daniels got every blade of grass that he wanted. It's that in 4 consecutive weeks, every quarterback Florida has faced pretty much got what they wanted. I mean, think about it. So you're facing another mobile threat in Brady Cook, and you can just close your eyes and picture 3rd and 12, no big deal. Brady Cook doesn't have a receiver open downfield. He's just going to tuck it and run, and it's going to pick up 15 yards, and they're going to move the chains, and that Florida defense is going to look up, hands on the knees, going, this sucks. What are we doing here? Florida fans, you know it. You can picture it. Think about this. Florida's hope in this game is that Mizzou is riding too high. That's the hope, right? The selection committee put the Tigers at number 9. Okay. They are the highest ranked 2-loss team so far. They are the first 2-loss team to be ranked ahead of a 1-loss team in the college football playoff rankings. They gave them so much respect after that Tennessee beatdown. They got respect nationally that they were not getting before. That is how good this team has been. First win in a matchup of ranked foes in a decade. Everyone is patting you on the back, telling you how great you are after this big win that you had against a traditional power on national television. And don't get mad at me, non-Tennessee fans, for saying it's a traditional power. You get what I'm saying. So how do you handle that? Do you handle success poorly and think that you're just going to show up and impose your will against Florida? Because as good as Mizzou is, I think they've gotten to this place because of scheme and because of that chip that we see every single time that Eli Drinkwitz opens his mouth. Every time. Can you carry that into a game like this and now dominate a favorable late season matchup? Can you get off blocks? Can you shut down another versatile, dynamic rushing attack? That's what Florida has working in its favor when it's right. Or will you take all of that love that you just got, and will you ruin your chance at a New Year's Six Bowl by losing to a Florida team that could just show up and be desperate? They're desperate. They're playing for a bowl game. They hear people talking about their head coach's future. They could show up and have that right mindset. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Florida shows up and plays its best football game of the year. I'm taking Mizzou to win, Florida to cover. Slow start for Mizzou. We're using the H word. We're saying a little hangover, Mizzou hangover. Maybe they're even losing at half. I won't rule that out. But I think it ends up being like a 31-27 win for Mizzou. Style points don't matter for Mizzou right now. Those are in the bank. You just got those style points. That's what the Tennessee win was for. Remember, they got to get into that top 11. That's the key. That's how you make sure. And probably just the top. Yeah, it's going to be the top 11 this year with likely a group of 5 team outside of that top 12. So top ranked group of 5 champ is going to get that Peach Bowl spot. Tulane's the only group of 5 team that is currently in the playoff top 25 right now, which is kind of crazy. They're only at 24. So if you get to 10-2 as a Power 5 team, you're not a lock to make it. But the fact that Mizzou just got that love from the selection committee, being the top ranked 2-loss team, that's huge. They're not gonna if they win these next 2 games by 1 point, they're not going to squander that. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my god, that was terrible. Even though Arkansas obviously is not competing for a bowl berth, and Florida is still trying to clinch bowl eligibility. So got to take care of business against Florida. I think they're able to do that, but I think it doesn't come as easy as it did last week against Tennessee.
Yeah, this very much strikes me as a game that like Mizzou controls, but Florida scores late to make the score like within covering. Like they tried to do it against LSU, but LSU just decided to spontaneously play a single defense at the end of the game. They're like, you know what? Actually, this game does not deserve to be close. Let's get a single stop. So, yeah, I think that, the big thing is going to be, or the old school drink mentality is going to be, hey, we need to play Schrader the way we used to play Roundtree and just give this dude 30 carries.
It's a good point.
70
That's a really
yards.
good point. Yeah.
That was like his
Tyler
favorite
Beatty
thing to do.
Tyler
Beatty was the guy.
Oh man, and Larry Roundtree, those two guys, like the first couple years of the drink era was just, can we give them 40 touches? 45? Like, I don't know. Let's just rock it till the wheels fall off, man. That's what he would do.
Yep, those are the Kevin Smith UCF numbers. That dude, he would run a running back into the ground. But see, the thing is, the temptation is going to be, okay, you got the best back you've had. Let's kind of just run the ball and kill the clock. I'm here to tell you right now, throw it in the direction of Luther Burden. As tough as it is, for Florida, and I will say this, I don't know who, there's no way to know this was going to happen, honestly, but the schedule makers that made Florida play Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and then Weiss, Burden, Cook, that's rough, man.
And Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, by the way, too.
Oh man,
part of that.
Yeah.
That is unkind. That did not set up well.
Yep, and Jordan Travis, obviously, like just trios, not like a good receiver or a good like three dudes you got to worry about with their legs. And like, as funny as like at this point, Brady Cook is a dual threat quarterback. He's won several games. He kept the Georgia game close with his legs, I think, when his arm wasn't really doing it. Like, so yeah, I think that you have so many things you got to stop. So I think it's tough, to be in this position where you got to play all these guys back to back. I'm genuinely not kidding. You guys know I've respected Weiss a ton, but yeah, I think that if you're Mizzou, just Luther Burden down there somewhere. I promise you it's going to work. LSU did it over and over again. It's there. You don't have to, run for 250 like Jaden Daniels did. Just Mizzou, do not make this into a game where I'm sitting here in the fourth quarter going, come on, bro. Come on. Let's get it going. Let's start throwing downfield just like it was against LSU. Because I have been non-secretively just rooting for this Mizzou team because I think they're cool and fun and new. And it's like, this can't be the game you trip up, bro, because this turns everything upside down. Because then Billy Napier starts to build momentum. Then, you win one of the three games we talked about against Mizzou, LSU, FSU, and you're done. You can get trounced by FSU and you don't care. But now,
they care.
So point being,
Florida fans.
No, they care.
They care. Yeah.
But in terms of Billy Napier's job security, I think he survives that no matter what if they beat Mizzou. You know what I'm saying? Even if they give up 50 or whatever, it's like, okay, you won one of the three. We're going somewhere. We have hopium. So I think that Mizzou, it's all up to them. I genuinely think we've talked about it with this Florida team. It's just kind of right now a Jimmy's and Joe's problem. Don't think it's anyone's fault. They could have done what LSU did and struck out in the transfer portal for DBs. They just opted to develop their own guys. I don't think either one's correct, but I think that sometimes it's a long build, like we talked about Florida. So I just don't think they have the dudes to cover those two guys. But yeah, I think Mizzou's style of play matters a lot. We've seen them really keep their foot on the gas, and I think they gotta just keep doing that. And if they do that, this should be a comfy win. But again, we've seen Florida be that chaos team, be that team that gets the turnover, gets the weird play, So just if Mizzou does not make mistakes, and if they are confident, they're set. But I'm really rooting for Mizzou to end this one strong.
I wonder about the health of Luther Burden a little bit. And I'm not saying that I wonder in terms of the result of this game, like I was saying last week for Tennessee. I know he got the touchdown late. I still don't think he's right. I don't think he's at the same level that he was at earlier in the year. I don't think he quite has that explosion. And I think that there is a part of that offense that isn't quite at the level that it was early on, just in terms of Burden. But what has made this team so good and why they had the week that they did was because they continue to find other ways to be able to beat you. They have an offensive line that can impose its will. They're giving Cody Schrader great running lanes, and he's doing awesome things with it. And the yards after contact with him, I got to look those up. SEC SecCat had those. I can't remember what exactly they are, but they still have found those other weapons, and Theo Weiss becoming what he's become, Mookie Cooper becoming what he's become. They still have other ways to be able to beat you if they only have a 65 or 70% version of Luther Burden, which I think it could be. And he might be one of those guys that he's going to need that bowl rest and then get him healthy for a bowl game. You don't have to worry about opt-outs with a guy like that who's not a draft eligible. That's the good thing too, as well. But I do think that that's a question that I have, but it's not a make or break element with this team, with how well they're scheming, with how well they're playing on both sides of the ball. Hopper as well, the leading tackler, is questionable for this one, but they were so good even when he went down in this game. So it's hard to look at one of those elements and say, well, this is going to be the thing that prevents Mizzou from winning. I think it's mindset. I think mindset is the only thing that can kind of get in the way, because they are the better football team. And there are a lot of Florida fans, and their heart of hearts, they would tell you Mizzou is a much better football team at this stage of the season with what both teams are doing right now. Okay, let's stick. By the way, we have all East games that we're talking about. We're only talking about 3 games because we're not cake week. I love cake, but we're not digging into the nitty gritty matchups that nobody cares about. So we're only talking about 3 conference games, and they're all within the East. Kentucky's a 1.5-point favorite on the road, South Carolina. The over/under I have is 2.5 references to sunglasses. Of course, I'll text Tom Hart and make sure that that happens for this one. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this goes back to the Beamer Stoops rivalry. They don't like each other. They just don't. They can say what they want. They don't like each other. They're different people, both from football families in the coaching world, very different perspectives on how to build a program. If Kentucky wins this game, does Stoops bust out the sunglasses in a post-game press conference? Probably not. But I'm here for any trolling, either side. I don't have a dog in this fight. Last year, Beamer did the trolling with the sunglasses. He had the shades. That was after Stoops had some very interesting SEC Media Day comments with Marty McGee talking about building a program that appeared to be a direct shot at Beamer. Stoops said that it takes more than stupid sunglasses to change the culture of a program. Again, we don't need it. We don't need a rivalry trophy. Just sunglasses go to the winning coach of this football game. That's it. We all understand. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. You can even go. Look, I'm a Ray-Ban enthusiast through and through. 10 years and running. You want to step it up. You want to go with the Nico Iamaleava sunglasses. Go full Gucci. That's fine. You can do that. Okay. Did I throw in his last name just to flex? Yes, I did. Absolutely.
Fair.
Do what you can. Flex with the sunglasses. That's fine. We can do that. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Sunglasses probably need to be a rivalry trophy somewhere. Why not start with a place like this? As for who wins this game and hoists those sunglasses, I don't think either fan base.
Before you say that, I will say the most baller move ever. What if Stoops, if he were to win this game, just walks out with like some old school aviators and to like sunglasses at night? That would be the most just like, I'm a little bit older than you. I got my own little thing going on. That would be a flex. I wish he would do something like that if you were to win this game.
I do too. I don't think he's wired that way.
That's not his thing. I know.
Yeah, somebody's gonna have to. A Kentucky fan, maybe our guy Gary Collins will tell me about this. But has there really been a time in which Stoops has clapped back at a coach with a troll? You know, it's one thing to make a comment like that, to make a jab, but like a post game, I just beat you. I'm gonna full on troll you for this victory. Probably something Muschamp related. There's probably something I'm forgetting with Muschamp. He hates Muschamp. That I know. Those guys. It might just be a South Carolina thing. It's not personal, Beamer. It's just a South Carolina thing that Stoops hates. So, okay. As for this matchup, Kentucky's weakness is in the passing game. Both sides of the ball. Can't defend it. Struggle to throw it at times this year. They're 93rd in the country against the pass, Will. Not good. Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, Joe Milton, those guys all had a lot of success through the air against that Kentucky defense. Spencer Rattler can absolutely join that group the way that he is throwing the football. He and Xavier Legette continue to be the best thing going for that team. Legette is over 1,000 yards in the season. He is the first Gamecock to do that since Pharoh Cooper 2014. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, Pharoh Cooper was so special, bro. Not to do this whole thing, but if you remember, he fumbled, I think, 2 punts in a playoff game for the Rams. And I'm just like, this guy's so good. Like, that kind of defined his NFL career. But as a player, even in the NFL, he was so electric, dude. Like, I love that guy. Anyway.
One of those guys that you just forget about over the course of time. There are so many of these great athletes and so many of these guys that do awesome things on special teams, and one guy comes in and you just forget about it. By the time that Debo was doing his thing at South Carolina, you're like, oh yeah, it's the Debo show. And Brian Edwards, that's another guy that we don't talk about probably enough.
Yeah,
all-time leading receiver at South Carolina. But Legette is 51 yards away from moving to number 2 for single season receiving yards at South Carolina. He's 425 away from Alshon Jeffrey's single season record that he set 2010. So think about that. If they get to a bowl game, it's not crazy to think that he could get there with how good he has been in the 3-game average. Quick math. I'm not doing that math. He could get there. He definitely could. If Maxwell Harrison, the Kentucky corner, if he's banged up after getting hurt in the Bama game, that is bad news bears for Kentucky. And I wonder if we would see it. And I think we're going to get more clarity on that later in the week. But I wonder if that would impact that line. That matchup could be very favorable for Legette and Rattler to be able to target him all day. On the other side of the ball, Can Kentucky take advantage of a bottom 10 pass defense? That's South Carolina. They've been mostly basura against the pass. They have. I think Leary has looked more comfortable since that bye week, but can you trust those receivers? I don't know about that. The drops, the fumbles, they have been frustrating. Texas A&M offensive line, Kentucky pass catchers. I am at some point probably going to come out with a list of the most disappointing units in the SEC. I think the Kentucky receivers belong in that group. I probably would have had Leary in that group as well, but kind of depends on how he finishes the season. On the road, Kentucky's ground game has not been that good. It really hasn't. You had a buck 60 rushing against Vandy. That's actually 10 less than their season average. Vandy's not defending anybody against the run or against the pass either. But only 110 at Mississippi State. Georgia, obviously, Georgia's been mostly good against the run, not totally elite, but you only had 55 rushing yards against that Georgia defense. South Carolina has only allowed 4 yards per carry once in the last 5 games since the bye, and it was at Mizzou, a ground game that we just heaped praise on with Cody Trader. Very, very good. Lights on, Willie B in November. This feels like South Carolina written all over it. It does. 5-1 in November home games under Shane Beamer. Lone loss 2 years ago against a Clemson team that was missing the playoff, but still ended up winning 10 games. Still plenty talented team. I'm going South Carolina by 2 scores. I am. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is when Beamer's teams are at their best. And I think we will get a bowl or bust game next week against Clemson. So I think this sets up for it. And I think that team shows up ready to play. Beamer just finds a way in November. And I think they do that. And I think Kentucky, those weaknesses show up on the road.
I'm trying to find, and I found what I was looking for, but just like an injury report for South Carolina, because I feel like just the last couple of times I've watched them, it's just been like dude after dude, just like hitting the turf. And I've said that, I even said that against A&M, where I was like, hey, if they had their full team, this would be a better game. But yeah, I think looks like Joyner is not going to be there. It says very doubtful was the quote. So like we probably knew that, but yeah, I think God, these two teams are so interesting right now, right? Because you could really see this game going either way. And it's funny because Kentucky just won this game, right, against Mississippi State. Like, this was the game that was like, we talked about at the time, was like, they never go on the road and like beat this team. It's just kind of weird that obviously, and that's something we don't really talk about as far as the Arnett firing. It's like, yeah, there were a couple of those back to back where I was like, this is kind of unacceptable. But yeah, I'm right there. Like, I want to believe in South Carolina so bad. I felt like you were about to like tiptoe to the line and be like, I like South Carolina's an upset. You're like, no, I love them. You know what, man? I think I'm gonna go right there with you. I think that, but I'm gonna just be a slight, like a 3 to 10 point win type vibe. I think that Kentucky, it's just so hard after a game like Alabama, man. I mean, they really felt like they were starting to put it all together. They felt like Leary was actually throwing the ball well in those 2 back-to-back games. We talk about like the Tennessee game where they kind of shocked us with how well their offense worked in a loss, but still they're spreading the ball around. It wasn't Leary's fault, honestly. And then the Mississippi State game, which again, no reason to keep dumping on Arnett, but he still played. They still played well, right? The game was over in like a quarter, but then other game was over in a quarter. Yeah, I mean, once you have a game like that against Alabama, especially as a team like Kentucky, it's just so hard to like rebound on the road the next week. I'm right there with you. And as much as like I like some of the things Kentucky's doing, and maybe the big thing this year that was so interesting was all these new offensive coordinators and how they're all going to adjust. We talked about Arnett a little bit. I love the research you did on the post-Leach adjustments. It sucks because we were so in on Cohen, and I think we were right, but I think it was going to take him.
I don't like the direction you're going with this. We don't look. I am as unbiased as they come. Many people have said, but I will not stand for any Liam Cohen slander. And to think that look, Kentucky fans have seen these games though, in which receivers have been open, and you can't blame a coordinator for drops and for overthrows when you've schemed a guy open 20 yards downfield and there's not a Georgia defender in that secondary near him. It's like, I think it's been a little bit of a tough go to figure out some of the tempo stuff that Leary is typically like to play with. I think you have to have the right personnel to be able to execute tempo, and that's probably not what we talk about enough. I'm not giving him a total pass because I obviously think that there are game plans that Cohen would like back. I am not out on him, and he's not in jeopardy of getting fired, in my opinion. And if he is, that's got to be because there's something personal there where that relationship has totally soured, and nothing that I have heard has made me believe that's the case.
Now, hold on. You started talking before I said the word but. I was about to give him credit. Who's talking about him getting fired? Oh, hold on.
All right.
I wasn't even about to slander him.
I'm looking out for my guy. I'm looking out for my guy. That's all.
When we say put the claws away, is that what you tell me? Look, this is like somebody dumping on Jaden Daniels. No, you feel. But the point being, what I was going to say is that felt like a really natural fit, and it took them a minute to kind of feel each other out, is all I was saying. And, we thought that from the jump, it would be, Leary, Cohen, like, you're all going to be on the same page. We love these receivers individually, but somehow, like, you get them all together, they keep Aaron Brown, they just don't catch the ball. I don't really understand it. And so, but like I said, I think they finally all got on a page about 2 weeks ago. It just took them a bit. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. All right, I'll allow it.
That's all I'm saying. We thought this would be like a turnkey, like immediately week one, the offense was going to work because it was so logical that their quarterback was as good, as last year's Levis, and their coordinator is just kind of a better version of like similar coaching tree, right? And so, but yeah, it seems like even though they've gotten it kind of working, it feels like after a game against Alabama that was such a letdown, and Stoops has bounced back already in one of those games. Honestly, a couple of those games this year already. We talked about the Georgia game and how well they played at least to start the Mizzou game. But I think that like with Carolina, like they know, and Beamer knows he just has to get one. It's like similar to the Florida conversation. It's like, this is a guy who I don't think he's going to get fired, but I think that to have the good vibes they had, before all the coaching changes, he is definitely a late season coach who can jump in on these opportunities. And I know that like, I'm not saying that UK is going to be sleeping or they're going to like, this is a trap game for them or anything. But I think that this and next week against Clemson are both really winnable games for Beamer. And Beamer knows, being around coaching so long, the offseason is written by the last 2 or 3 weeks. So you can have a great season. I mean, look at Mullen in 2020, a great season, and then it just came apart at the end. It's the when you lose the games is so important, right? And so I think for him knowing, okay, boom, if I can go out 2-0, to end the season and, get some momentum going. Oh, look at, Nick Harbor. He's so cool. Look at, the stuff we got. So yeah. And I think that he knows that, and he knows that his vibes are his key to success, and to maintain those, he has to win a game like this at home in front of the crowd. We saw it last year with A&M. So yeah, I'm gonna say like a win would be covering because they're the underdog, but I think it'd be a close win, barely into double digits, like a 9 or 8 point game.
The point with Beamer is the same one that I made with Napier. It is, I don't think either of those head coaches are getting fired this year. Mm-hmm. I think that what's more important is avoiding being on every hot seat list in America as you enter this new expanded version of the sport, of the conference, specifically of the playoff. And you are trying to build as much recruiting momentum as possible. You want to be able to acquire as much talent as humanly possible and not have to go into living rooms and say, oh, my job is safe through this year or that year. That's what the name of the game is. And that's where it helped Beamer after he finished the way that he did last year. And it opened up more doors for him. And he will be the first to tell you that's it. Season to season momentum isn't a thing. But does it impact you when you're talking to boosters, when you're trying to get money to do this, when you're trying to sign recruits to be able to do that? Yes, that's where it matters. That's where it matters right now. And being able to get to a bowl game, to win 4 in a row, to be able to do that, you're still trying to keep that on the table. Obviously, they've got a long ways to go to get there. Just because you beat Jacksonville State and Vandy doesn't mean they're getting there. But I do think South Carolina wins against Kentucky, and Kentucky doesn't get the revenge that it is seeking in this matchup. Okay, big one. Thank God for this game. Thank God for this game. Number 1, Georgia. Finally, number 1, Georgia in the college football playoff poll. They're 10.5 point favorites against number 18, Tennessee. The over-under I have, Will, is 12.8 Tennessee points. 12.8. Yeah. We get very specific on Saturday Night South podcast. This is what we do. In these 6 matchups since Dobbs nailed boot, Josh Dobbs are both of our lad of the week last week. I spoke on your behalf. I assumed it was going to be Josh Dobbs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously. Not this week, though. He's an enemy this week.
That's
Saints
very
destroyer.
True. Good point. Tennessee, in those 6 matchups, post 2016, they have not scored more than 21 points against Georgia, and they have averaged 12.8 points. And that's not all Butch and Pruitt. It's only a 15-point average under Heupel. And you look at this and you go, well, if the number 1 offense in America only scored 13 points in that game last year, what makes us think that this group, which has far less offensive firepower and is also on the heels of Josh Heupel's worst offensive game as a head coach,
Hold on. I love how you started to say experience, that you remember their quarterback was Joe Belt. You're like, dang, he's got experience. Doesn't he?
No, I was going to say experience. I was going to say explosiveness, and then I stumbled over my
Explosiveness is
words.
also fair.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. That's not really there in the way that Tennessee hoped it would be. So you look at those things and you say, what makes us think that this group right now can score points against Georgia? The path to a Tennessee upset is this. Georgia's playing its third consecutive ranked foe. Florida was at number 26 unofficially in the most receiving votes in the AP poll at the time of that matchup. So take that for what it is. If Tennessee is winning this game, it is because they hit on a couple of those deep throws early. And in the fourth quarter, they're breaking off 7 to 8 yard runs against a gas defense that looks like a group at the tail end of a grueling stretch. That's the path for Tennessee. It isn't repeatedly hoping that Joe Milton is going to test this Georgia secondary, which is lights out. It is trying to force Georgia to stop that versatile ground game for 4 quarters and to
Mm-hmm.
punish them. That wrong peek in the backfield instance where Squirrel White just gets a step and he gets behind that secondary. It's trying to make sure that you capitalize on that play and it's not an overthrow and it's not leading a guy out of bounds. It's not a drop like Ramel Keaton's had a couple of those this year. It's hitting that. You have to. You're not going to get a ton of those opportunities. You got to hit them when you get them. Even after Tennessee struggled to run at Mizzou, that's got to be the plan of attack. It just has to be, especially at home in what's going to be a charged atmosphere, of course, despite what Gary says. Yeah, I think Neyland is a little bit of an advantage when it comes to that atmosphere and bringing the juice. I do. That sounds conservative for a Tennessee team that one might think should be just emptying the bag of tricks. And maybe there is some of that. And maybe it's like Heupel's going for it on 4th and 5 or less all day. Maybe that he does
Mm-hmm.
that. But it's such a different mindset than last year for this Tennessee team because of what they do well and what they don't do well. Force Georgia without a game wrecker up front to go on the road and shut down the strength of your team. And
Now,
Carson
hold on. Are we just going to sleep on our boy Stackhouse like that?
Stackhouse is great. An awesome moment. Love that moment. Great out of pocket segment on breaking down is Takeo Spikes breaking down what was going through his mind as he was running that play back against Mizzou. And then Stackhouse quote tweets it. He's like, "Yep, this is verbatim, basically what I was thinking going through that." I don't want to say that Stackhouse is in the same camp as a Jordan Davis and a Jalen Carter. That's disrespectful to those two lads. Won't do that. Can't do it. But he's been great. He's been great. I don't think they have that guy that's going to take over a game like we saw Jalen Carter do against Tennessee last year. That's more my point. They have guys that will step up probably, but doing the things that he did, it just changed the entire complexion of defense. Carson Beck has been awesome. He's been awesome this year. No doubt about it. He's still only played in 2 true road games. At Auburn, slow start. At Vandy, far from his best day. His tackle actually knocked CJ Taylor out, maybe for the rest of the season. Yeah, not great. On the heels of Georgia's best win of the year, and now at number 1 in the playoff bowl, Carson Beck is about to see the best defense that he's faced, in my opinion. I think it's the best defense that he has faced. You know what? I won't say that. I want that back. I want that back. Mizzou's the best defense that he's faced. But Tennessee has potential to look like the best defense that he has faced. That's probably the better way to phrase that. Okay. I think that Tennessee defense should be pissed off after getting embarrassed at Mizzou. I do. I really do. Adam Sparks wrote about the communication issues that Tennessee was having on defense. Can they get that ironed out? I think they will. I think they'll get that ironed out at home. I believe that Tennessee can get to Carson Beck, and this won't be one of those games where Carson Beck is in the postgame press conference saying, I don't think I was touched all game. I don't think this is that day for him. This sounds like I am building up to a big upset prediction. Doesn't it sound like that, Will? I'm not. I'm not, though. Yeah. Don't worry. I'm not. I think we get an entertaining game. I do. Tennessee hasn't lost at home since that 2021 Georgia game for a reason. They are really, really good at Neyland, even if it hasn't been the prettiest of victories this year. But do I trust Tennessee to play clean enough football to beat a team of Georgia's caliber? I don't. Maybe it's like a Milton pick six, CJ Allen forcing a scoop and score. Again, I have a lot of CJ Allen stock. I see a big turnover in the second half fueling Georgia. That's what I think is the difference. I think Tennessee gives Georgia a true fight, But as we've seen all year, even on the road at Auburn, Georgia does not flinch. I'm going to go Georgia to win 28-21.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm looking for right now. Is like me and Marla were talking about. Yeah, there we go. It's Brett McMurphy said that Georgia opens as a 3-point favorite versus Alabama. I don't know what people are watching when they watch this Georgia team because this feels like another line where I'm just like, what have y'all seen that makes you think that Georgia's like, I don't know, like they just feel like they're every game since that Auburn game, which the Auburn game was tough, all right, and Vandy just never matters. I'm not being mean, but it's just like okay, like another like like teams just kind of stop trying. It's like yeah, but whatever. So basically, since that Auburn game, blew out Kentucky in a big challenge, blew out Florida in a game that like we both we thought it was going to be a close game. Marley thought Florida was going to win. Like it was, they blew them out. And then Mizzou, that was a great game. I think they just proved a lot about Mizzou. You know what I'm saying? And then like I'm not going to go through. I am going through the whole schedule, but it's like every week has kind of just been like, maybe this is the week. Nope. And so that's kind of my thing. Is I'm just like y'all, we were doubting them, not y'all. We was doubting them without Brock Bowers, which made sense. It was a fair thing to say. Let's see how they do without potentially the best player in the country. Let's see how they do. We saw it. Now he's back catching touchdowns. Don't really know what I mean, I'm imagining a world where there is just like Joe Milton drops back to pass and there was just like a Viking death march going on and like the Georgia defense like breaks off of the side and I don't think it'll be one turn. I think it'll be 3 turnovers. Like I think that this dude is going to make the worst play because he makes plays against Florida that are bad. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not being mean. It's just like we've been waiting on this guy to turn it on for his whole career. Unfortunately, the haters were correct to this point about Joe Milton. I think that we were both like, okay, we would love to see it a little bit. We were out on him being preseason all SEC, but it's like, hey, like it would be fun if this guy was good. So far, we've not seen that fun player. We've seen it for a play, like the one last week with Thornton and everything. But yeah, I mean, we haven't seen it for a full game. And I think Georgia capitalizes on this on mistakes. And I think this is a team in a team in Tennessee that last year did not make a ton of mistakes. We talked about the offense. Now they didn't, commit turnovers and throw interceptions. They were really clean. This is not that team. They don't have those playmakers. They don't have a quarterback that confidently trusts his legs. I understand that Milton's made way more, like progress than we ever thought he could. But there's a difference between being mobile, like when no one expects it, and Georgia being like, we're not letting Milton run, which I think is pretty easy to do when you decide to stop it. That's the difference. Is a lot of his runs are just like, all right, you can have it. You're not going to take off, whatever. And so yeah, I think that, this is a game that obviously both teams would love to have. I'm not breaking any news there. But on the same front, it's like I don't see so far that this Georgia team has seen a huge drop-off from last year. And Tennessee just certainly has. And last year in Sanford Stadium, it was a bloodbath. And I understand, a home game, the rain, whatever you want to say. But, like, I don't think against a worse team, if that game could have and should have been so much worse for Tennessee – and against a worse Tennessee team, I don't think that it's just immediately like they figured out. And we saw it against Alabama. Like Tennessee came out, they're ready to go. You know what I'm saying? I get it. And then what happened? You know what I'm saying? They ended up, like I said the same thing in that game. Okay, this is going to be a statement game for Alabama. They're going to whoop Tennessee. They covered. Like that's the thing is that the end of that game was Alabama. If you were a playoff committee guy who went to sleep, you'd be like, yeah, Alabama smoked them. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of my thing here is that like all it takes is one mistake to lose to Georgia. 2, you could be out of the game because they're not, they'll make mistakes. I'm not saying Georgia's this perfect dynamo of a team, but the style, like the big difference is not even the explosive plays. It's the lack of being able to get easy plays, and it's the amount of mistakes. And I think that those are 2 things that play into Georgia's hand even more than last year. So yeah, I see another UGA blowout. I think that, not a statement game against Josh Heupel or anything. I think what he did last year was awesome. Year before, awesome. This year's been a little bit of a letdown. I think when you get blown out by Mizzou the way that they did, I don't think there's a speech you can give your guys that makes Georgia any easier. I don't know.
Alternatively, Georgia is exactly the type of opponent you have to face, or you hope to face rather, after getting smashed. That you get the bad taste. You get a rivalry game. Somebody's going to take that as me saying that Georgia's an ideal matchup for Tennessee. That is not what I'm saying. That is not in the slightest. But you have a nothing to lose. Let's move on from this. Plenty of motivation. We should not be checked out. We are going to have an unbelievable atmosphere at home and a chance to move past what was an embarrassing afternoon. And it was embarrassing because that Mizzou team is better. It's just better. Okay. It's not embarrassing because you didn't show up. It's embarrassing because Mizzou is better. Okay. And I think that Tennessee can have that right mindset in this one. Now, does it mean that Tennessee's going to win this football game? I don't think so, because that's the thing that's making this Georgia team so freaking good, is that they're finding ways to be able to beat you. And they make winning plays down the stretch, and they do not panic. So I still think that if Georgia wins this game by 7, I could be even more impressed with them. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden, like, oh, they're more vulnerable if they only win on the road in a charged atmosphere by 7 points. It just means that they don't necessarily have that week to week, we're going to dominate no matter what type stretch. And that's fine. You could still win a national championship doing those things. You absolutely could. But that's the other thing, too. It's like, how many, I feel like I've been wrong in predicting how a Georgia game would go for the last 5-6 weeks in terms of when they were truly going to impose their will. Kentucky was the last one that I felt good about, that I said they're going to blow Kentucky out. That ain't going to be close. And Auburn, I guess I was right about too. But more recently, I said Florida was going to make it a close game. Said that, oh, Mizzou, they're going to kill them. Oh, Ole Miss, down to the wire game. So maybe I'm wrong again on this one. That's what I'm saying. Maybe I'm just we're not exactly clicking on all cylinders. I haven't predicted Georgia to lose a regular season game, and I still think they're going to go 13-0. But crazier things that happen. This would be the chaos scenario that would throw everything that we've been talking about with projections into a different light, even for a team like Alabama playing them in the SEC championship, trying to do whatever they can to get over the logjam that is Texas.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Bama fan, it's easy against Tennessee, right? But you got to be the biggest Georgia fan ever, because you need Georgia to be Godzilla. You need Georgia to be the best Georgia team. Herschel Walker walking through the tunnel, AJ Green. Like, you need to tell everybody this is the scariest Georgia team of all times. Is that if you beat them or hang it close, it helps your bowl, not necessarily playoff, but bowl situation if you hang it close on them. But yeah, I think, I mean, I said this, and I'm sad that I wasn't here on Wednesday, because like that one, I low-key, like I said it in the one before, where I was like, I really hope Lane Kiffin isn't. Remember, I said, I hope Lane Kiffin isn't sitting there saying, we just can't recruit. We don't have the money. We don't have. He literally said exactly what I said. Please grow up and don't say this after you get blown up. I said it to you, and I go, yep, this is Lane Kiffin. Here you go. You got blown out, and you started moping about how you can't pay recruits. Like, okay, man. So yeah, I think that I think Tennessee has a little bit more pride than that, as mean as that sounds. But it's like, I think they at least feel like they do belong in these bigger games. They've won. I mean, last year, I think that Tennessee won bigger games than Ole Miss has. So I get it, but at the same time, yeah, I think that this Georgia team is just hitting its stride. I'll say, Mike Bobo, I owe you an apology. I was not familiar with your game. Carson Beck, you turned it around, buddy. Both of these guys turned it around. It wasn't like they started off and we were just wrong from the jump, like people were like Jaden or whatever. But it's like, I think Beck is probably playing his way into second team All SEC. That's gonna be a conversation. But yeah, I respect the heck out of that dude and the stuff they're doing on offense, especially now with Brock. It's cool that we get to see them without Brock Bowers too, because it's not that it's the Brock Bowers show. It's seeing us. One of my favorite little idioms is whatever is the Emperor Cincinnatus. How often do you think about the Roman Empire? There you go, the Emperor Cincinnatus.
Never. Literally never.
That doesn't shock me. You're about business. You stand on business. You're not sitting here thinking about the Roman Empire. But anyway, so Cincinnatus, right, was basically forced into a leadership role and as the emperor. And the issue that Rome had over time is that they had a parliament, they had a democracy or a republic, which is where we got our government. But they would have an emperor in times of war, like a commander in chief, to be on one page, like a head coach. It was like, we're going here. I don't want to hear what Congress has to say. Cincinnatus got nominated, and after they won the war, I think it was the Carthage War, he comes back and they say he returned to his farm. Like, he had the ability to do what several emperors had done and say, you know what, this is my country now. You owe me. I'm staying here. And he just went back to his farm. Where was I going with that? Oscar Delp. This dude had one catch last week. He was Diet Brock Bowers for 3 weeks. He was getting these crazy acrobatic catches, giving them what they needed. Not the same as Brock Bowers, but filling that little bit of that role to be the safety blanket. Bowers is back. He's not out there complaining for touches. He's not checking out. He's like, you know what? I'm Cincinnati. So back to my farmland. When Brock Bowers leaves, this is my time.
True. But I do think he gives them the ability to disguise looks with being able to run 12 personnel.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I do think that there is something to be said for his impact and what he's done.
Yeah.
But and by the way, the people that continue to live in my mentions about Bobo, my entire point, and I'm not walking back a take, I'll repeat what I said in the preseason. I think that Georgia is going to get to a national championship with a 14-0 start, and they are going to have a second half in that game in which they wish they had somebody that was scheming better than Bobo. Has Bobo figured things out in a great way? Yes. And I've given him plenty of praise, I feel like, every single week. And I make sure to actually single them out when I'm saying I love that design by Bobo and I love the execution, the route that Bowers ran or that Delp ran or that Beck hit him in this spot and they're really understanding the offense. I've tried to give him his flowers. I'm not sitting here dogging the guy or saying that Georgia wasn't going to be able to get off to a 10-0 start or something like that. So people that are trying to clown me and saying I owe Bobo an apology or whatever, like, no, my point was just that I looked at the coordinators that have had total autonomy on their side of the ball, who have won a national championship in the college football playoff era. And I said, does Bobo belong in that group? I don't think he will end up in that group. My entire point was based on that. So Georgia fans, I love you. I do. And it's your passion that makes shows like this able to be executed year round. I get it. I fully get it. But just remember that. That's all I'm asking. Just remember. You don't have to give me you don't have to give me praise or anything like that. I haven't earned that, but that's all. That's all I'll say about that.
I was mean. I owe you guys an apology. I was making fun of Mike, but hey, I went to the South Carolina game. Y'all can't tell me I was being a hater from afar. I watched South Carolina just completely beat the stew out of Georgia for a half, and I went, "Dang, Bobo was not looking good out there." So again, that's like, not to like pick on Georgia fans, but it's like that's the process, right? Is that we're all on the same page, that we're not fired up about this guy, and then as soan as he starts to turn around, it's like, "Well, you were wrong." It's like we were wrong together, brother. Anyway, moving on.
Exactly. All right, let's do some lock of the week.
Yep.
8-3. 8-3. Thank you to Utah covering plus 9.5 at Washington. Probably my luckiest cover to date. Thank you to the Washington defender who, again, decided that the football was too heavy to carry through the end zone. Just decided, you know what? I just cannot carry this thing anymore. I'm going to let it go at the 1.5 yard line. Appreciate that. Thank
friend
you.
Of the program.
Very much.
Look out for your lock.
Yeah, we'll get him on the show. I will give him a nice pat on the back. Thank you to Utah for blocking that field goal. That I don't know how Washington gets a field goal like that blocked from 32 yards. I'm not allowed to criticize kickers because Pat McAfee told me that I'm not allowed to, so I won't do that. But anyway, I've won 8 of my last 9. Lock of the week is hot. Hottest I've ever been with lock of the week. Let's stay hot, Will. We're going to flip the script. Last week, I took the Utah points on the road. This week, I am laying the point. I'm taking Arizona -1 at home against Utah. Arizona won by 3 at Colorado. Finally failed to cover a spread for the first time since week 4. So maybe Vegas is like, you know what? We're going to pump the brakes on Arizona. I am not. Noah Fifita is a drug, and I am addicted. Okay? I am. He is awesome. He is so freaking fun to watch.
It sounds like something you like go out in the desert with Aaron Rodgers and do some Noah Fifita.
Look, I'd be here for it. Okay, not a drug guy, but Noah Fifita, I'm very much addicted. I can admit that. That's fine. This team could just beat you in so many different ways. Utah is banged up right now. I think they struggle on the road against a red hot Arizona team that nobody wants to play right now. Some are saying that Mississippi State should hang a banner for beating Arizona. I'm saying that it wouldn't count because it wasn't with Noah Fifita out there. So what does it really mean? We ride with the Wildcats. Arizona -1 at home against Utah. 9-3 would be pretty good. It'd be pretty good. Would love to get there.
Listen, this week it came out that Arizona is $240 million in debt. So you never want to bet against somebody that owes that much money. You know, they get desperate.
Yeah, this is true.
They need to win football games. So the stadium's going to start getting repossessed piece by piece. They got to win.
That is the perfect transition to Arizona grad Ari Wasserman, actually. Excellent insights from him, in my opinion. He actually brings up that $240 million in debt, so we talk about that as well. But Ari is one of the voices of reasons in the college football media world, and all things fast food. Yes, stay for the fast food discussion. Very in-depth fast food discussion at the end. So here's Ari. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the Athletics' Ari Wasserman. Ari, at this moment, how many Michigan fans do you have in your mentions after you wrote about them being the villains?
You know, a lot, and it is just a reminder. And I've covered some scandals before. I feel like all fans are the same. You know, people are, acting like Michigan fans are crazy and they're not accepting reality. But the truth of the matter is that if your favorite team, if you're a fan, and your favorite team gets caught up in anything, you have a hard time reconciling the truth. And, I wrote a simple column saying that they're not victims here and people lost their minds. Like, I was like, isn't that like the most straightforward, non-creative angle ever? Like, it's not even creative. And people are losing their minds. And it's like, you root for your team. You want them to persevere through even transgressions and you want what's best. But the amount of hoops that people have been willing and knowingly jumping through in order to shield their own brains from the truth is a really interesting test on psychology in general. I'm not much of a politics person, but I kind of feel like regardless of what side you're on, you do the same side of thing. Like if you're a Democrat and the Democratic Party does something that, you wouldn't otherwise agree with, you find a way to, form it to your opinion and vice versa. And it's just kind of the whole psychological aspect of it is fascinating to me. And I think that's why fan sites are so popular, because people just want to read what they think or what they want to be true. And people don't want to read negative things, even if the negative things are true. So, I write a lot of columns for The Athletic, and a lot of times they can be critical, and, it's not out of the realm of normalcy for me to deal with this sort of thing. So I understand that. And, for every one Michigan fan that's yelling at me and calling me a homer and telling me I'm an idiot, there's 25 other people who read it that didn't say anything. So, I'm doing my best to make it through, and really I'm just kind of enjoying the process, and I'm excited to see how this all pans out. And truthfully speaking, lastly, Connor, I'll tell you, like, I don't know what would have to go wrong in my own life for me to go onto Twitter and like talk shit to somebody I've ever met before. Like, I don't know the psychology of it. I don't know why people do it and why it's so rampant. And also, I don't know what they think they're accomplishing. Like, are they trying to make me feel bad, or are they trying to prop up their team? Like, I just don't understand the whole thing.
Well, you bring up a great point that all college football fans are the same. And the irony for those who are calling you a homer, there are plenty of Ohio State fans who are pointing the finger at Michigan. And you remember the Zach Smith, Urban Meyer stuff all too well. And I'm sure you wrote critical things about Ohio State and what it was going through, and the amount of hoops that those fans were jumping through at that time. Like, that's just what fans do when they get put in a corner. And so Michigan isn't atypical. Like, this is kind of the only
just
way.
Fan temperament.
Like,
yeah.
I mean,
and I wrote some critical things, a lot of critical things during that time. Honestly, it was the most stressful, 2 or 3 months of my career, because at the time I wasn't a columnist or a national writer. I was a beat writer. So like, people who read my stuff were Ohio State fans, and that's the audience I was serving, and they did not want to read that stuff. But if you go back and you search, Ari Wasserman, Zach Smith scandal, or Urban Meyer, Ari Wasserman, Zach Smith, you'll read very critical columns about what Ohio State was going through, and you'll get a lot of the same general reaction from Ohio State fans that didn't want to accept it. And it's just kind of the way it is. So, listen, a lot of people care deeply about their teams, and a lot of people think that reporters view the sport or cling to a team the way that they do for their own. And they don't understand that we are, or most of us are, impartial and don't really gain the same satisfaction from covering a team or all the teams that they do in terms of the connection they feel to the teams that they like. And, the number one thing that you can do if somebody writes something that's critical of your team or critical of something that you love is to discredit that person. So I understand the notion of, hey, this is a homer, he's an idiot, he's a lackey, and all those things. But the truth of the matter is Ohio State could lose 800 games in a row, and I would sleep like a baby at night. Like, I do not give a shit. And people can't accept it. And I don't care when Michigan wins. I have my opinions. I have my projections. I'd like to be right when I make a projection, but I don't care who wins the Ohio State-Michigan game this year. I've got family in town. I got Thanksgiving going. We got Black Friday shot. Like, there's a lot going on in my life that, and I don't know if that is upsetting to people who read the work, but my love affair with the work is writing the stories, being plugged in, and doing the journalism that makes The Athletic what it is. And that's that. So, I'll never be able to convince these people, and nor do I feel like I got to just stop trying, because they're in that galaxy brain area right now where it's just like, okay, well, this guy hates my favorite team. He's an asshole and doesn't know anything. And, I'll let the work speak for itself to the people who actually want to read it for what it was meant to be read by,
I'll just start. I think anybody that gets really in depth with the bias claims and stuff like that, just a simple response of, I respect your unbiased opinion on this matter. That's it. And
I try. The thing that I've learned about these people, Connor, and I'm sure you've dealt with it too, is you can't say anything, and they'll always have a comeback, and they'll always say something. And, it's just, you can't win. They've made up like, if they're going to tweet something at you that's an insult or, designed to make you look like a fool, you're not going to be like changing anyone's mind. And it's the same thing again with politics. If somebody's a Republican and they say something stupid, and Democrat comes in and says something that disproves their thought process, then there's something else. And again, vice versa. I'm not revealing my political views here. I'm just saying, when people are convinced of something, they are not to be reasoned with. So that's the reality of it. And actually, I think it's unfortunate, to be honest. Like, if you're unable to see the truth, or, take new information or evidence or reporting and accept it for what it is, then, it's just a disconnect that I don't understand. Like, if I were an Ohio State fan or a Michigan fan, I would want to know the truth about what was going on with my favorite team. I'd want to know the realistic way that other people view them. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't root for Michigan or that they didn't do what they did, but this, like, bury your head under the sand and pretend like it didn't happen or everybody's out to get you is just so interesting to me. But again, not atypical, just kind of the flavor of the month, because this is what's going on. And, if, Penn State fans did it when they had their scandals, and, everybody does it. And that's just kind of the way it is. So
What's the truth about Harbaugh next year? Do you think Harbaugh is still at Michigan?
I don't know the answer to that question, because we're at the point right now where we don't have all the answers to the questions that we need. And I wrote a column on Friday that the Michigan fans that were calling me biased on Monday didn't call me biased for on Friday, which was, I thought that the punishment was premature. They have enough to punish him, I guess. There's enough evidence there to punish the program that some wrongdoing was done. But I come from the school of thought that when and if you drop the hammer is dropped when the entire story is told. When you have the entire amount of evidence that you're going to be, sifting through, you've come to a decision, and everything that you have in that information backs that final decision. So, again, hey, a big Ohio State homer thought they were punished prematurely. But that said, I don't feel bad for the punishment happening, because it was self-inflicted, which is, what I wrote on Monday. So for Harbaugh, I mean, the university is clearly 100% behind him. The president is tweeting out things like, we make it through adversity, and something that you would actually, see after a tragedy, which I thought was very bizarre. So my only question would be, like, Harbaugh's already illustrated the last 2 years that he wants to go to the NFL. If that opportunity presents itself, maybe he might do it. But I think that might have been true anyway. We need to know what he knew. We need to know how much of Michigan benefited from this. And the tricky thing about it is that I don't know what's able to be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt and what's not. So if you can't prove it, and, all these things are still at play, then you kind of make the best decision with the incomplete evidence that you have at the end of it, not in the beginning of it. So that's my thought process. I think it's possible that he's gone. And I certainly think, Connor, that's possible that he returns.
I really just wanted you to
I know
answer.
that's not a satisfying answer.
I just wanted you. I wanted you to answer yes, so we could go through some candidates for the job and what it would look like, because that search would be.
I mean, we could do that. We could do, like, hypothetical candidates, but I mean, the truth is that, like, think about it. Like, who is Connor Stallions completely? Like, the funniest thing to me about this whole thing isn't, like, what Michigan did. It's the full scope of the cartoon character that man is. Like, he seems to be completely and utterly off the reservation, which I guess Michigan fans would tell you supports the lone wolf aspect of it. But the other flip of the coin is, if you have signs that are helping you win, or you have information that is much better than you've ever had before, and you're always in the right place at the right time, as a coach and as a player, there's no way that you could not feel that, So I am, like, very torn between, did he know, did he not know? In my experience, going back to the Urban Meyer, Zach Smith stuff, the coach usually knows. And that's that. But, like, I don't just, like, you get a feel for it if you're calling plays. Hey, we know their plays all the time. Like, at a certain point, like, you got to be like, where did this stuff come from? The analogy that I used is, if the mother of your child walked in with a duffel bag of $1 million, you might be happy to see the money, but what's the first question? Where did that come from? You know what I mean? Like that. So, like, the level of disconnect that he would have to have and his coaches would have to have in order to not know, while the man is standing next to them on the sideline with a headset feeding them calls, is a level of plausible deniability that I'm not sure I can get to. So that to me it's a very tricky, complicated manner. I don't know the full scope of it. I don't think anybody does. Harbaugh is going to have to speak on Friday in front of the U.S. government and talk about it a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what the defense is. And as we get more information and it becomes clear what he knew and when he knew it and the extent of this scheme and who was involved, which could trickle down even to the players, then I think at that point I'll understand and have an opinion of what the punishment should be and how it's going to, play out for Michigan and his future there.
I really just wanted to ask you if you think your boy Jed Fish at Arizona, a place where obviously you have a lot of bias towards, of course.
Huge.
I was just wondering if you think that would be an interesting
Number 17, baby.
Look, that Arizona team, to think that they lost at Mississippi State, albeit with a different quarterback. I'm addicted to Noah Fafita.
Yeah.
I've talked about that. To think that they're at the place they're at right now, and his coaching tree is incredible. The last 15 years to have worked with Pete Carroll, Harbaugh, maybe that'll prevent him from getting the Michigan job, McVay and Belichick, and now to be doing the things he's doing, like Jed Fish is in the National Coach of the Year conversation. And if Michigan were to have to make a move like that, that'd be a fascinating one that I don't think a lot of people would probably be talking about at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if he would be a candidate for Michigan, but I do think he's a candidate for UCLA here pretty soon. And all of Arizona's best players are from Southern California. So, I think that could get kind of interesting. Also, U of A is like $250 million upside down on their budget. I don't know if you've seen the story, but the university budget got miscalculated. And it's almost I think it's $250 million. So they're posting stuff on Facebook right now, asking for fans to donate money to support the band and stuff. It's a tough scene there. I would not be surprised if, just a guess, just us girls talking here, but it would not surprise me if he were UCLA's coach in 2 months with half of Arizona's team there.
And you could do that in theory. There's nothing stopping it, and they have the window available, that 30-day window. And
Fafita, T-Mac, all those guys are from Southern California. So, why wouldn't they go and follow their coach that they've been loyal to? I'm not trying to be an alarmist to Arizona fans, but Jed Fish is certainly a strike while the iron's hot scenario. I think that, doing what he did there in 2 years, he's completely and utterly changed the talent scope on that roster. They're not just well coached, but they actually have good enough players to compete in these games for the first time in a decade. And they're winning. So his buy-in to Tucson and building that the right way, I think illustrates a ability to build a program. And I find that to be the most important bullet point on any coach's resume when the job carousel begins. So, I don't know what Arizona's money situation is, or if they're going to get a contract extension signed before he gets an offer from somewhere else. But, you mentioned it, and I think other people will mention it. I think he's going to be a very hot candidate this year for job openings that open. And, he always likes to sell that Tucson, Arizona is a great place to retire. Well, so is Pasadena. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Let's talk about this A&M vacancy. You are the founder of the Stars Matter movement. Before we talk about just candidates in general, because obviously that's where everybody's already gone to at this point, but some perspective on the Fisher era. If you have the ability to poach an active national championship winning coach with all of those resources, you do it 100 times out of 100. Now, this sport, we know it's all about talent acquisition. And I think the obvious takeaway from this tenure and the failure of it is, not just the contract, the money, but more so the length of the contract, to me, is the bigger issue with what A&M did. But at the same time, that's what it takes to poach a national championship winning coach who's not on bad terms with his program. What can be learned by what we saw play out in the 6 years of Jimbo Fisher in College Station?
That hiring an older coach that has won a national championship isn't an infallible thing. It's Dabo Sweeney is going to be an interesting rumor. I don't know that I would ever anticipate he would do that, but the way that he answered the question, we have to have that discourse this week, and we will. So let me ask you this: Clemson's on a down year, and Dabo Sweeney hasn't necessarily shown the ability, or at least the willingness, to keep up with the changing sport. He's not Mr. NIL. He certainly hasn't been utilizing the transfer portal, which I think could be the difference between a 10-2 season and a 6-6 season. And he's having his worst year at Clemson, I think, ever, if not since the beginning of his tenure. So is that the person you want to go spend $100 million of guaranteed money trying to sign? Because that seems a lot like what Jimbo was doing at Florida State when he left. Florida State was heading in the wrong direction. Do you want to hire a coach that's heading in the wrong direction? And for that much money? So that's the first prong. And the second prong is, I know you're A&M and I know you got all this money, but like maybe don't offer the coach that you get this time $100 million of guaranteed money, because you might want to fire him in 3 or 4 years and you might be out another buyout that's record setting. So I don't know what, like A&M was so happy and so hot after Jimbo Fisher the first time that I think they would have written anything in that contract. I don't know if they're going to do that again. So, but that said, if somebody falls out of the sky and wants to go to A&M and he's like a home run hire, I don't think that A&M is going to lose him over money. So it's a very interesting scenario. I wrote a column today basically saying that I believe that Texas A&M is a better job than people think it is. I actually think you could make the case that it's a top 5 job in America, certainly top 10 based on, all the things that are important for a job, which is, financial buy-in from the administration and NIL and location, proximity to talent, conference affiliation, fan support, stadium size, facilities. They've got every single thing that you need to win a national championship. There are certain places in the sport that you cannot win a national championship at no matter what you do. A&M is not one of them. And I understand there are people who say they've sucked forever, and they have. But I don't necessarily think that if you get the right coach in there that can really, muster up the cocktail of success, which is, managing your locker room the right way, day-to-day operations, and of course recruiting and NIL, that you shouldn't be able to scheme some plays up that take that ultra talented roster to the next level. I'm the reason why he got fired is because they didn't do it this year with all the players they have on their team. Now you've got Connor Wegman and you've got Evan Stewart. You've got a bunch of great defensive linemen. Like there's a very nice little package there where it could be really, really good if the right person goes. But that leaves it up to A&M to go get the right person. And I'm not sure that the people who run the program there or the ones writing the checks would rather have the right person or be swayed by the sexiness of whoever they hire. Like Dabo Sweeney would be a sexy hire. I don't necessarily believe it would be the right one. So there's a lot to sift through there. But I certainly believe that A&M has a lot to offer, and they might be able to offer people that are already in destination jobs that we're not even thinking of right now. The same way, we're 2 years removed from Mario Cristobal bolting from Oregon to Miami, and Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma for USC, and Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame for LSU. Like all the, who could go out? Like, would it be the most shocking thing in the entire world if they did that with somebody? I don't think so, especially considering the fact, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling here, but I'm passionate about it. If you're a coach and you go there, two things can happen. One, you're the first person that wins ever, and they make a statue of you outside of Kyle Field, and you're a legend. Or two, you get fired, and then your grandchildren's grandchildren are rich. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? And I don't think that's necessarily the case for everybody. I think Kalen DeBoer is making less than $5 million. You don't think that if A&M comes in there with all that monopoly money, that's going to get the ears perked up? Like, it's going to be an interesting coaching search, and I think it might end in very entertaining fashion.
To your point, I think the notion that you can't win at A&M, it's impossible to win at A&M because they haven't done it, is that can be taken out of context. And I think it was Josh Pate who brought it up. It was like, look at Georgia pre-Kirby. That's what everybody was saying about Georgia. Right. And then you realize,
and I know Georgia won a national title in 1980, and like this is 100 years, but like it's the same thing people were saying to me before the season when I said I thought Texas was going to make the playoff. Oh, they've never Sark has never won 10 games in a season. Oh, they've never done anything. They haven't won a national championship since Vince Young. It's like, okay, they've got really good players and a coach that knows how to design an offense. Like we're overcomplicating a simple matter. And if you get the right, I don't even know if Sark's the right guy. I don't even know if you got another coach in there with that roster, if it could have been even better. But like they probably are going to make the playoff this year. And the fact that they stunk for the last 10 years had no bearing on that.
It's a fair thing to bring.
They're going to lose to Iowa State now, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. You have all but guaranteed. You said they're probably going to make the playoff, and then they're going to lose. Yeah. They're going to be like a 3.
I mean, they look like it. They look like they're making the playoff. I can't guarantee it, obviously.
Yeah, that's where the biases lie when you do preseason predictions. Of course, you want to be able to make the playoff, so you look a little bit smarter. I do wonder how the playoff will change the perspective of teams like A&M and Penn State. Penn State's a great example of that. Ole Miss is becoming a great example. Even USC, and how the 12-team playoff will view these teams as to the lens that they are looked at through the 4-team playoff. And I think that it's going to change this entire perspective of like, oh, well, you can't win this, you can't do this. And I'm not saying those teams are about to start winning national championships. I don't think that's the case, but it feels like the sport is going to change a lot with those teams. You are a 14 playoff guy. Why do you hate more football?
Mm-hmm. Is it more? Show me the math on that. Everybody always says that, but I don't know what the math is. Why is it more?
I think it's officially more because we have more weeks, and it's just about the amount of weeks in which we can have football on our televisions.
Is it the same amount of weeks? Or they're going to start the season earlier?
Well, no, it's the December because they would have to start the postseason earlier.
I know, but aren't they going to start axing regular season games in order to make it? So it's like a health issue. I don't know if they're going to get more.
The regular season.
I don't know what the. Yeah, I mean, like, listen, too, it's like 3 or 4 more games. And, like, listen, if it's more, then great. I love football. I love watching it. It's my favorite thing to do. I'm the idiot that was watching the Bowling Green Toledo game on my couch with my shirt off last night. Like, I like it. It's the thing that I will miss is the regular season's importance. And I will miss the debates that we have. And, like, I resent the fact and the notion that Penn State, a team that now ranks number 12 in the playoff rankings while their frickin' program's on fire, can hang a college football playoff banner in their facility as if they accomplished something this year when they lost the only 2 games that mattered to them on their entire schedule. And it's like, to me, I've always been my thought process is put teams in a position where they have to be excellent in order to celebrate an achievement. And, 4 is not that many. Obviously, it's way less percentage-wise in college football to make the playoff than it is in the NFL and, the NBA and the Major League Baseball when half the leagues make it. And certainly college basketball, a regular season that I haven't even watched half of in like 2 years. I don't understand why people think that more teams will be involved when they're already playing the games that matter. Like the Georgia-Mizzou game was a playoff game for Mizzou. And they lost. They played hard and they lost. They're out now because they played a team that was better and beat them. So, like, I'm seeing all these posts about Mizzou will get to host a playoff game and all this stuff. And it's like, that's great for the fans, I guess, like to be able to go to Mizzou and, see a game in mid-December. It's, potentially a home game. There are a few losses away from me. But, like, I'll miss the Georgia-Mizzou game that we all were glued to the television watching because that was important. And, more playoff games and more stakes at the end of the year is exciting, but we have the playoff games. We just don't watch them the same way right now. So if you want to say, why don't you like more football or why don't you like football, then you hopefully were glued to the Oregon game on Saturday because if they would have lost to USC, they would have been out. And it was a playoff game, but no one treated it like it. In fact, I think it was like the 3rd most watched game of its own window. It's like we have playoff games right there in our faces. We're just not appreciating them. And I think that next year, when I'm on this show, November 15th of 2024 or whatever, and we're having a discussion about who's going to be the 11 seed and who's going to get the bye instead of who should be in and who should be out, which is far more compelling, you might think, well, shit, this kind of, there's no consequence for losing, especially if you're Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State and the superpowers of the sport. They can lose 2 or even 3 times and still get in. And like that doesn't sit well with me. I want my national champion to be excellent. And lastly, if you are a person who is let more teams be involved in, there's more important things to the sport than the national championship, then why is the remedy to the more important things in the sport and championship messing with the thing and the mechanism that crowns the champion? Find another way to entertain yourself. And if you care about your team, then why does the Rose Bowl stink when it's not watch it? No one's telling you that you can't appreciate those things. You don't have to mess with the playoff. That's literally exists to crown the national champion, and we're letting bad teams in comparison to the great teams into the field. So, I know that I'm on my own island here, and people are like, yeah, I can't wait to watch Pitt and West Virginia play in Morgantown on December 12th. All I see is a bunch of cows walking through the slaughterhouse, but everybody else thinks that that's going to be some sort of AFC championship thing. And I think it'll be interesting to see how fans readjust their expectations. Like, are Penn State fans going to be like, well, we keep making the playoff, or are they going to still be mad? Because this was an awful season for them. And they shouldn't get to celebrate after this year. And I think that that's what makes sports compelling, right? Like, not everybody gets to be a good champion. Not everybody gets a trophy. If you suck and you lose to good teams, then you're out. Like, I don't know why I'm the only person that thinks this.
No, I think it's perfectly
You know
fair.
what? Alas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think
It's
there's
like
anything.
they had a terrible year. They should not be rewarded.
Oh, they beat West Virginia. I mean, that's crowning achievement for Penn
It's
State.
huge for them.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
Big time quality.
And they
wins.
played 2 games, and it's a shame because they played 2 games against teams that would likely make the playoff or are in the position to make the playoff this year pretty closely when they were 1 or 2 offensive skill position players away from potentially winning those games. But they lost, and Mizzou lost, and everybody else that's like, go rank. What are the rankings? Read the teams 15-8 to me right now, or 15-12. Sorry, or even 10, and tell me if those are great football teams. They're fine. They're fine teams. They had solid years. They're not great, and I don't know why we're changing the national championship race to appease them.
I actually stand corrected. The sign that you don't hate football is the fact that you answered that question by saying you're watching Maction while not wearing a shirt.
Well, I'm also a gambling addict. That had something to do with that too.
Irrelevant. That doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say I stand corrected. I don't want the 12-teamer anymore. I've been trying to flip people, but I haven't been doing a good job. Nobody flips. Everybody still thinks that the 12 team's better.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I think there's going to be good and bad. I love the regular season like you. I'm not one of those people that says this team needs to be involved and needs to be relevant for college football to be great. I think college football is going to be great almost no matter what. I think that there will be moments of frustration. I also think there will be moments in which in our content business, it's more interesting to talk about a team that's still in the race in mid-November than not in the race. And to me, that Tennessee, Mizzou would have been a huge game for playoff implications last week. And instead, it's a game that's got New Year's Six Bowl implications. We will change our perspectives. We always do.
But if you love football so much, then why is the New York Six thing not getting it done for you?
Yeah, it's fair.
That's the thing I don't understand. It's like what? Like if you're like, oh well, why you don't like football? There's more to it than national championship races. If you love football so much, and that's the only thing that matters to you, and it's not all about the title, then go celebrate the New York the implications for the New York Six game. Like, why can't you do that? Why do you have to change the admission rate to be excellent in order to feel that pressure? Because you also care about the national championship race. Everyone cares. I'm not the only one.
The New Year's Six, we've gotten, I think, to a place though where even in the playoff era where the relevance has faded, and you see that, go back a couple of years ago, the Peach Bowl, and Michigan State not having Kenneth Walker, Pitt doesn't have Kenny Pickett out there, and you're like, this is a New Year's Six Bowl, and these guys are just opting out and they don't really care about it. It's so tough to continue to incentivize that, and that's a different subject for a different time. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are definitely,
and I really hope that people don't opt out of playoff games.
They better not, man.
They probably won't. But listen, buddy, I think that it sounds crazy, but if you are the best player on Pitt and your team is not going to win the national championship, and you have $100 million out there in career earnings waiting for you, then you've already played more football. You might not want to put your body at risk anymore. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, and I really hope it doesn't, but somebody's going to do it. People are selfish. You don't think it's ever going to happen?
Nick Bosa kind of already did it, didn't he? I mean,
yeah, people shut down. Like Nick Bosa shut his season down before they were eliminated from the playoff.
Walks off against TCU,
and guess what? Now he's one of the best players in the NFL, and no one remembers it because no one cares when you get to the league.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I think that's going to be regular. Obviously, there will be less people opting out, and being in the playoff than a chance to win the national championship is great. But I don't think that it's like the blanket statement too of like this solves opting out is like
no, it doesn't.
Weird to me because I don't think it does. And also, I want to say this too, because you knew you were going to get me fired up with this. I knew that's what you were doing. When I see the brackets of the 12 team, like I am like you, it's going to be fun. It's not like I'm going to be sitting in the corner next year with my arms like crossed around my chest with like bad body language. I'm going to enjoy it. I just don't think people are accepting or realizing the consequences that we're going to face because we get that bracket. It's a better bracket than we have now. There's more football games with more meaning at the end of the year. The only thing I don't think people realize is how many games through the regular season that were win or die are no longer going to have those implications, and how sterile some of these matchups are going to be. Like, listen, the SEC championship game is going to be winner take all. Next year, it doesn't matter who wins. The Michigan-Ohio State game last year, yes, the loser went to the playoff. That was an extenuating circumstance. But this year, it will not matter who wins. The people like that? Like, we are building to the apex of 12-week season, and we finally get Georgia, Alabama in a dome, and you're stripping away the meaning of that game. So why? So that West Virginia and Pitt can feel good in a week after that?
This has
Like,
been
it
a
doesn't
bad
make any
pod
sense
for
to me.
West Virginia and Pitt. This is really
No, I always use them. I always use them because Pitt and these teams, like Pitt and Michigan State, I should use because they were the team that everybody. I always have Pitt in my head because people are like the example that you put up is the most popular thing. Like Kenny Pickett play. This could have been a playoff game. It's like, okay, both teams stink in comparison to the teams that are going to win the national title this year, and that's okay. They might be better than 80% of the sport, but they stink in comparison to the team that actually won it that year. And I don't think that we need to open up the gates of the playoff to above average or mediocre plus teams because we feel like the sport isn't interesting enough without them in the playoff in November. You don't think that the 8 teams that are left right now that are vying to get into the 4-team field are like making the results of this season ultra compelling? I have to turn on the Mizzou Tennessee game to feel a rush. Like, I don't understand any of it. Like, I really, really don't. And I got a rush out of Mizzou this year. I honestly think they almost beat Georgia. They're a really good football team. They got outlasted and squeezed, and their head got popped off by a team that actually deserves to win a national title. And that team will likely be represented in the 4-team field, and the team that lost and is clearly inferior won't. You win and you lose. That's it. It's the sport.
Can I get you fired up one more time? Last one.
I just feel like I just don't understand why this is so complicated for everyone.
No, I don't think.
To me, it's so clear.
Yeah, like I don't think that there's not, and especially with the audience that we have in the SEC, there are plenty of people who feel exactly like you do, who are listening to everything you're saying, just nodding their head, going, "Yep, Ari is right about this. Ari is right about that."
What the hell is Paul Feinbaum going to even talk about when the losses don't matter anymore? His whole show is Alabama and LSU, and all of those teams are going to make it every year now.
It's got a lot of.
What is LSU? LSU ranks 15th right now, and they have 3 losses.
And
do people realize how mediocre the teams are at the end of the year in the back end of the top 12?
He will get.
They could literally walk back in and still get in, even though their season has been shitty for their standard. I don't know. It's crazy.
He'll get the people saying, "I think we deserve a shot at the playoff," when they're like looking up and they're like, "Wait a minute, you guys are 6-4 right now. What do you mean you think he's still a chance at the playoff?" That'll be the callers on.
And if that's the case, then we've turned it into the NFL, which again, I love the NFL. I enjoy watching it. I've got a fantasy team. I bet the games. I enjoy it. I don't want the college football universe to feel like the NFL. And if that's weird, then I'm sorry.
No, not weird at all. Not weird at all. All right, last one. The pimento chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A. Yeah or no? Are you
never had it?
Okay.
Never eaten it. I like pimento cheese, and I like Chick-fil-A. You know what I'll say about Chick-fil-A, dude? It's really good. I think their fries are overrated, and I don't like waiting in line for as long as it takes to get it.
But it's the A+.
And it's part of the reason why
service.
That's why I don't go to In-N-Out as much. The only time I ever eat In-N-Out now is if it's at like 2:30 and I haven't eaten lunch yet and there's no line. But if you go to Chick-fil-A in between 11 and 1, it's like 30 minutes sometimes. And it's like, I'm just not waiting 30 minutes for a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich when I can like just Uber Eats a better quality meal and just have it sent to my house, you know, or go to the store or get something. I don't know. Fast food to me is not fast anymore, and it irritates me. It's like it's like, how many more employees have to be in the back of a Chick-fil-A to get these chicken sandwiches pumped out? It's a zoo, and it's like always these people in front of you with the, what am I going to have today? It's like, you don't know? There's 5 options. Pick one. Step 1, what fried chicken do you want? Step 2, what side? Step 3, what's your drink? Keep it moving, people. Did you try the sandwich? Is it good?
No, my father-in-law had it and said it was disgusting, but he had it with like a peach milkshake and the fries with and the Chick-fil-A sauce is naturally sweet. And I'm like, you overdid it. You overdid the sweetness. You can't have it with all those sweet things.
Yeah, the peach milkshake.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, I like pimento cheese, but I've seen this Instagram trend of people who buy Chick-fil-A sandwiches and then do the macaroni. And then they'll dump the macaroni onto the sandwich and eat that with the fries on the sandwich. You know, I eat in shame when no one's looking, but like I don't do crazy stuff like that. I just get my sandwich and keep it moving. Like I don't like, concocting these like weird, like the McDonald's one is the air, land, and sea where they get the fish fillet sandwich or Filet-O-Fish fillet, and then they put the burger and the chicken on it and eat it all in one bite. It's like, what are you doing? Just eat a sandwich and be a slob in peace. Like I don't know what people do, but trying to eat less fast food these days. I have a daughter and I would like to see her graduate from high school. So maybe that's part of the reason. But there is a Chick-fil-A right across the street, and I have seen it advertised. It did look interesting, but I just haven't done it yet.
Okay. All right. Well,
You know what I've noticed? One last thing, Connor, and I'll let you know. I'll let you go. I've got one fast food grievance and one comment. My grievance is, why has Pizza Hut not just created the stuffed crust, but just selling the crust only? That's the one thing that I feel like they should do. And then secondly, I feel like all of these fast food restaurants are very brilliant at creating these new concoctions that get people to want to try stuff. It's like, oh, check the new pretzel bun or the new spice on the chicken nugget. There's always some new gimmick. And when you go get it, isn't it always just very disappointing and very similar to what you already always get from that place?
Yeah.
Like, I never feel like there's like a temporary menu item or a new hot shot item that they're trying that's like, holy crap, this is the greatest thing I've ever eaten. It's always like a 2-month thing. It's always, that's fine. And then it goes away. So like, I've tried my best to not be swindled by, come to Sonic for your new spicy bratwurst, instead of the hot dog. It's all the same. It comes from the same place and it all tastes similar and it tastes great. Fast food tastes great. That's why everybody eats it. But it's not like they're reinventing the wheel here. Just like, go get your spicy chicken deluxe sandwich and put your Polynesian sauce on it and eat your fries and move on with your day. It's not that deep. I don't know.
The McRib is overrated, I think. I that's a take I've been
I haven't had one in 15 years. I tried it once. I was like, this is not good, and then never ate it again.
Yeah. It's like, wait, this is more sauce than actual meat. Or I put that in air quotes.
And what is the meat? Like, that's the thing too. It's like, I know that fast food isn't necessarily like the pinnacle of freshness or the pinnacle of high quality food, but like, I do not like eating things that I can't even begin to tell you what it is made out of. Like, what is the meat on there? Like, I think it's kind of gross. Like, at least with chicken nuggets at, McDonald's or the fish sandwich, like, you could at least like open it up and it looks like fish. But like, if you like slice that open, like, what is it? Beef? Is it pork? I don't even know what it is.
It's wild caught Alaskan cod, right? That's
Alaskan pollock.
Alaskan pollock. That's the fillet of fish. Yeah.
That's the fish. Yeah.
You just know.
Yeah. I haven't had one of those in a while too.
Have I had a fillet of fish more recently than you?
Probably.
Yeah.
I haven't had one in months.
Jeez. All right. I'll let you get to lunch.
Have you?
I had one in March. I had 2 in March, actually. Yeah, I housed both of them.
Yeah, maybe not then. I don't know. It hasn't been a year, but it's been a long time.
Jeez.
But, that sounds pretty good right now. The problem with it is that if you get a bad one, it can leave a sour taste in your mouth and it doesn't travel well. So when you get it at McDonald's, you got to get it fresh and you got to get the right batch, because there is nothing worse than a bad Filet-O-Fish. It doesn't hit. It's kind of gross. But when you get a fresh one that hits right, it's glorious. So maybe if you want to knock them off of your power rankings because the quality of the product varies based on the location or how much care the person who's making it puts into it, then I could understand that too. But what is like the newest fast food item that's even really good? That's like different than that didn't exist 2 years ago.
That's a good question. I think everybody's thought of it. I like your stuffed crust by itself idea. It's very similar to a mozzarella stick, obviously, and like a cheesy bread sort of thing. Domino's has the cheesy
stuffed
bread.
Crust hits a little bit different.
Yeah, like cheesy bread on top is different than cheesy bread inside. I want to be deceived that I'm eating this stick of cheese that's been dipped in a bunch of different seasonings and stuff.
I just think that the crust on the stuffed crust is better than a stuffed cheese stick. So if you could just duplicate how the crust is and then give us a dipping sauce and then sell that on its side. Like, I'm surprised they didn't come up with that yet.
Okay.
I'm waiting for it.
That will be the first fast food item you get excited about. The first food.
It would be kind of fun though. Like if you and I just got to like work at one of these fast food corporations and like our entire existence was to find a new way to make some new menu item out of the same 5. Like, that's my thing about Taco Bell. Like, I never, ever, ever go to Taco Bell. It's been years and years and years since I've eaten there. And people like don't like that take because people love Taco Bell. But Taco Bell has like 25 menu items and there's only 4 ingredients. Like, it's the same thing repackaged and repurposed 18 to 20 different times. And it's like, oh, did you get your quesarito? Did you get your burrito? Did you get your this Rito or this? It's the same shit. All of it. It's like, if you like it, that's great. But like, I don't need to get swindled to go to Taco Bell so that the cheese and the tortilla are put on in a different order. It's crazy to me. They've done a good job of like swindling people, I think.
I haven't had Taco Bell since right before the Canback game, and I got food poisoning from that chicken the night before. Haven't had it since. I got food poisoning consecutive times in college from Taco Bell, and that's when my body was just a garbage truck. And so I'm like, never again. Can't do Taco Bell. Not worth it. Yeah. All right. This is great, man. Really appreciate it.
I think Taco Bell's got a great business plan, the fourth meal.
Smart. It's really smart.
Buddy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, man. We'll do it again soon.
It is smart. Yeah. If you're hammered and you're out partying, and we're open till 5 if you want to come in and just put a bunch of garbage down your throat. Like, when McDonald's and Wendy's and stuff close at like 11, it's like, what are you doing?
Coming to an an athletic story near you. From Ari Wasserman.
All right. Thanks for having me on, bud. Appreciate it.
Lad of the week, Will. I'm going to start. Churchill Abbas. If you know who that is, if you know the name Churchill Abbas, you are either a degenerate gambler or you are a diehard college basketball fan. That's what you are. Little story time for you. Okay, so a few weeks ago, my buddy Ben, Iowa grad, loves college football, more of a pro sports type guy, sends a text to me and my 3.
I would be a pro sports guy too if I was an Iowa grad. I'll just say that.
It's not the worst season in the world, but like, he lives in Chicago. It's Cubs, it's Bears, it's Bulls and stuff. So he sends a text to us and says, "Hey, like I'm joining a fantasy college basketball league with like his brother and his friends or whatever." He's like, "Does anybody watch college basketball?" Basically. And I said, to be honest with you, during football season, I'm not that guy. I'll catch the occasional game, but I get into it in February just because that's what the job dictates. And the entire text conversation was just hoping that I gave him a good answer, because my other 2 buddies are both very much out of the college basketball world. Mm-hmm. So he does this draft. And so we had like a video chat like a couple days after the draft. And so we're like, "Oh, how'd it go? How was everything?" And he said, "Great. I had first overall pick." He's like, "I took this guy from DePaul. His name's Churchill Bass." It's like, he's a freshman, and like Bronson, my other buddy who went to Iowa, we're like, never heard of that before. There's some big names in college basketball. I mean, like a Hunter Dickinson or something like that. I mean, you're going to take a freshman, you're probably going to go to like Kentucky or something. I mean, there are some big time names in college basketball. So we're like, Churchill Bass. It's like, yeah, he's at DePaul. We're like, surely we would have heard about this. Surely we would have known. None of us are dialed into DePaul hoops or anything like that. But it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, like a big time recruit locally. So we look him up and we're like, okay. And he didn't really have a whole lot of offers. And so my buddy Bronson says, "You sure this wasn't like in alphabetical order or something, that these players were listed when you made this draft?" And he's like, no. Like, he's DePaul. Like, he's a big time guy. And then you see this look in his eyes on the video chat. It's this moment of panic. He goes back and it's one of those drafts that you do where it's not like a live draft. It's over the course of several hours. So we can kind of go back and look at the field and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And he's having this conversation with us. And then he says, "So the funny thing is it was definitely listed in alphabetical order. And Abbas, Abass." So we just die laughing. We're just uncontrollably laughing that Ben, in his first ever fantasy basketball draft, takes this guy who nobody has heard of, and he just took him because he didn't realize it was listed in alphabetical order. Probably doesn't speak too well to the strength of his team. But that's not how we operate. I say, okay, we are the biggest Churchill Bass fans ever now. We look up all of his info and stuff like that. I follow him on Twitter. He follows me back. I haven't reached out yet.
That's how you know you're in trouble. When you follow a guy, they follow you back. It's like, you are not the number one pick, brother.
Dude, I set up Google alerts for him. I am all in on Churchill Bass. I've like done my research on some of his background. He was part of the NBA Africa program, and he was like he started playing basketball when he was 15 years old. And we are now just the biggest Churchill Bass fans ever. And I'm trying to find a not creepy way to reach out to him to reach out to an 18-year-old kid and say, hey, my buddies and I, we can't wait to watch you just tear it up this year as a true freshman and do all these things. His first 2 games, he doesn't score a point. And he's coming off the bench. He had like 4 blocks in his second game. So, of course, we were like texting about it. And like, dude is keeping people away from the rim. That's what Churchill's doing. Last night, my man starts. First college bucket is a slam, like a thunder dunk, throws it down, 9 points. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Lou Alcindor, but he's not going to be that. So Churchill Abass, you got fans. And we are, our entire group text has just turned into Churchill Abass appreciation and absolutely nothing else.
Okay, I have 2 points of feedback here. Is the team name Churchill Downs? I feel like that would be easy.
It's gotta
What's the
be.
team name?
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know that. That is a good question. I need to be able to get that. I think he had an offer from Louisville though at one point as well, which Louisville hoops is not. No, that's not.
I was about to say smart, so we know he's smart if he didn't go to Louisville.
Yeah.
Second, here's what you need to do. All right, since you're the front man for this, you're the one who could actually talk to this guy for a real reason. You need to ask him. You got 2 options. You tell me. You can either ask him if he has a cameo and he does messages for fans, to which he's going to say no because he's Churchill Abass. And then you say, oh, man, you should. I really wanted you to record something for my friend, but you don't have one. And he either can go, like, I'll go make one, or he'll go, oh, my gosh, that's so cool. Just do it. Okay, boom. Or you could just make up a story you're writing and be like, hey, I gotta get a quote from you really quick. And then actually do that. Just hit him up and be like, hey, I'm doing a story about, NBA Africa. I talked to, don't lie, but be like, hey, talking about international players in the NBA or whatever, or in sports. I think there's a way that you can talk to this guy and get him in on this.
There's something there. There's got to be something there, and especially now that he followed me back, I'm like, all right, we're good. He's not exactly team follow back, so you know what? I'll take that as a badge of honor. But yeah, the Churchill Abass Naismith Award watch list, we are fronting that. I don't know that he has a ton of fans. I watched this interview with him that he did, and he was like, yeah, my mom used to like beat me. I used to do whatever I could to get out of the house. And I'm like, Churchill, you've seen some stuff, man. He's like, yeah, all I do is dunk. I just want to get near the rim and dunk. This guy is awesome. I'm convinced that this is the smartest thing that Ben has ever done, is draft Churchill Abass with the #1 overall pick.
It's a dynasty league. Yeah, he's getting better. It's a dynasty.
It's a dynasty.
I started to ask, but I was like, what type of sickos are your friends if they're playing dynasty college basketball league? He might be set. If he's a freshman, it's a dynasty. This is actually looking okay.
Look, diaper dandy. Some are saying.
Look, if you get a one and done, that's just 1 year, brother. But an investment in Churchill Abass, several shares of Church. Anyway, so I said I have an unhinged one, and you just completely blew mine out of the water. I'm so sad. You should have been like, actually, dude. Anyway, okay. Lads of the week. Two fired SEC West college football coaches. Have you seen Coach O's deal with Roback?
I have been all over this. I am a Roback guy through and through. I don't have anything set up with them currently, a la Field Yates. I would love to be able to get something set up. Jalen Milroe is a Roback NIL guy as well. Fun fact. Yeah, he's all over it. But yeah, I wear Robacks. I have 2 or 3 different Roback things, and I'm trying to acquire more. The Coach O Roback commercial is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's unbelievable.
So you're talking about the one where he's like, I'm an athlete, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Because it's funny because I knew it from the press conferences, and I was like, that's cool. Like, as an LSU fan, that's cool. Like, oh, it's good to see this again. I saw the one. There's a commercial that Roback did. They're like a clothing brand, and it's like, okay, he is like, it's as if like LeBron or like Antetokounmpo or like Anthony Edwards were doing an ad, but it's Coach O, and he's just like, if you're an athlete like me, you gotta wear Roback, and it's him shirtless, like punching like mitts, like boxing mitts, but like on like a football field, I think, if I remember correctly. Like, it's the most. I'm like, this guy is living my dream. This guy got his big old buyout. He got to go coach LSU. He got to go coach Joe Burrow. He got to go hang out for 2 years, do whatever he wanted to do. And then he got fired and got this big. And now he can just do whatever he wants. He can go. I don't really see. That's a guy who, if I were him, I would never coach again. Maybe go coach like a middle school team or something, and just go have fun and just like blow everybody out. You know what I'm saying? Like, have one of those fun jobs. Go coach in Hawaii. go take the Hawaii job, Coach O. Go somewhere like that where it's like nobody cares and you can just go be fun. But yeah, good for him. I love that he's loving retirement. That's the one thing I've always said about Coach O is like, everybody's misunderstood him at every page. When we fired him, I was so happy for him. I was just like, dude, you did it. You lived the Cajun dream. You got to coach at LSU. Now you're rich. You don't have to worry about any of this. So he's a king. He gets to do this stuff forever. I love that for him.
My book, Fired Coaches, the Coach O story. Look, he would have to be a part of that book idea, because that man is living the life that we think everyone lives when they get fired, or rather the life that we think everyone should live when they are fired.
You know what's funny about him? If you talked to him for that book, he would have two stories. He would have the story where he got fired from Ole Miss, and he was like, I was just a wild man back then. I really had to get it all under control. I had to go be humble. I had to do all this stuff. Da, da, da. And then he had the second where he's just like, actually, I was right the first time. I'm out in Destin with some blondes. That was the right way to do it. And I'm like, that's what he's doing. That's what he's right. I clicked on on his Twitter the other day. He is just posted up with like a dime in his Abby. I'm like, you're such a king. So I'm just so happy for him. And like I said, I've never hated him. I just think, he just got it checked out. And who among us wouldn't after that season? He's not wired like Kirby. He's wired like me. So good for him. Second guy, Jimbo Fisher. Now, again, we could all dump on Jimbo Fisher and talk about how badly it's gone. But think about this. They're not taking away that Heisman. They're not taking away that national championship. He had a total of 10 years, if you count the end of the FSU stuff, where he just got to do whatever he wanted to do. He literally got to hire DJ Durkin and Bobby Petrino on the same staff. Do you know how insane that is? Like, now that we can take a step back, who gets to do that? Just get paid like more money than Joel Osteen has to go live in Texas, several ranches. You go to A&M, and here's the crazy thing about him. I don't think it changed anything, because he got Jamarcus Russell drafted. He got Christian Ponder drafted. He got EJ Manuel drafted. He got Jameis Winston drafted. His resume is what it is. Him winning at A&M was completely irrelevant. And looking back now, it's kind of easy to see that. Like, at the time, obviously, great hire. Like, I get why they did it. I get why Scott Woodward at the time, threw the bag at him. It was a great hire for stability. But it's like, what was he going to prove at A&M? Do you think he's Nick Saban? No. You know what I'm saying? Like, based on everything we know about him, he is not an adapt or die guy. So he got to completely just make out like a bandit. He got to make a fake plaque. He got to,
somebody made it for him. I mean, and somebody made it. He did not personally make the plaque. By the way, SEC Shorts, very, very funny A&M video that dropped this week. I know A&M fans, it's going to take a while to have any sort of humor about this situation, but when you're ready, it's there for you. SEC Shorts on YouTube. So funny.
Yeah, I mean, and he also got to call out Nick Saban. He got to beat Nick Saban. You know what I'm saying? I think he beat him twice.
He beat him once.
Oh, no, he almost beat him. He beat him once and then almost beat him the second year. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, you got to have that one victory. You got to ride off in the sunset. Those are the two greatest extended retirement tours I've ever seen. They let Coach O coach for 2 years when he had nothing going on. He probably would have gotten himself in trouble in COVID anyway. Might as well be somebody else's money. Then he got to ride off in the sunset. Jimbo, like I said, it's like, who's hiring him after this? Like, he's so washed and he good. He got to be a great offensive mind in like the 90s, you know what I'm saying, into the 2000s. And now it's like he just gets to go be a family man, hang out, say little folksy isms. I want him to get a podcast, honestly. I want him to just be at one of his ranches, like with the most beautiful dog you've ever seen and like a hat and just talking about life, just talking about what it means to be a man. You know what I'm saying? So I think that both of those guys are just living the dream. As much as we want to dump on those guys, they're so rich. Like, that's the thing, is like, they got us. They got you. As much as you want to hate them, like, our words will never take that money out of their account. So it's like, would you rather be a guy that everybody likes? It's like the Kanye thing. It's like, we're not Kanye, but Jay-Z said this. It's like, would you rather be like, overpaid or overrated or whatever? It's like, or underpaid or overrated, where it's like, you could either be the guy who works really hard, grinds all this stuff like we've been throughout our career, or you could be the guy who's just always getting money no matter what and can just hire Bobby Petrino and DJ Durkin. And it's like, that seems kind of awesome to be that guy, actually. So the winning was, he never said, he obviously didn't promise. He didn't, it's like they hired him to win. He said he was going to win, but it's not like he had to do that to get the money. So if they were going to make that incentive based, it would have been different, but they didn't. And so, yeah, I hope that he gets to enjoy his place in college football. The FSU teams with Jameis and Dalvin Cook were super fun. And I think that was cool. He obviously got to be with LSU, got to coach all the guys I talked about. So good for him. Good for Coach O. I'm done hating these guys. They're living the dream.
The guy got paid 9 figures to be like a college football coach, a disappointing college football coach. That's just the A&M money. That's just the A&M money. That's winning in life. It is. We can hate on it. We can say, how could you ever sign off on a contract like that? Jimbo's good. I don't know what his next step is. If it is in podcasting, God bless the person that's got to transcribe and do those videos. Oh my God, the poor AI program is just going to shut down. That has to deal with that. Oh my goodness. But whatever the future holds for Jimbo Fisher, he is so unbelievably wealthy in ways that we couldn't have ever pictured a college football coach being. I mean, like think about that, and think about how much money it would have taken the best coach of the 90s in any sport to get to Jimbo Fisher levels of wealth. And he has done that. And he has existed at the right time, and he got the right person, right people, 2 people. 3 people, I guess, if you want to count the buyout, because there's the initial contract, there was the extension, and now I guess there's the buyout. And they didn't try and have some sort of like BS scandal to get him fired with cause or anything like that. Jimbo Fisher has succeeded in all 3 of those levels. And you know what? We should praise that.
Yeah, you know what the dream is, Connor? Perpetual coziness. To just wake up and be cozy all day. And I think that's what he's done. If someone hit you up and was like, hey, Connor, I'm going to give you $10 million a year to just write way too early stuff, you would be like, you know what? I got you, bro. Give me a 2026 NFL draft prediction. I got you. People are going to tear me apart online. I'm going to delete Twitter off my phone. I'm going to have the best time of my life. See you, bro.
What's that dog on TikTok that was the bones or no bones day?
Bones or no bones? Yeah, bones day.
R.I.P. that dog. Didn't mean to go there. Didn't mean to end on a note, but yeah, Jimbo Fisher is living a no bones life forever.
Literally, bro.
Forever.
No bones day every day on the ranch, bro.
Yes, unreal. All right. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast, which is presented by Texas Pete. Follow us on the app formerly known as Twitter, at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.